Hello and welcome to a special David Rams live stream. Today it's special because we have a very special guest. Aditya Prakash, also known as Soytheist on his social media accounts, is joining us. He's a vegan and an activist, and he's coming to have a chat about some woke Westerners, including some vegans, who have been making it their mission to try to educate him on racism and colonialism. Yep, that's what's going on. Before we get into it, just a few quick points. If you're watching the replay of the live stream, as in you're not watching it live, well, hi, first of all, welcome. Thanks for checking it out. I'm sure that you're going to enjoy it. And if you want to get to any specific topic, if you're interested in one specific area of this, you can check across the bottom of the progress bar, and there are chapter markers all across the bar right there. So you can just jump to any particular topic that you want to get into. If you're watching live, hi, big hello to you. Thank you for joining us today. And there will be a Q&A at the end of this live stream. Now, you can get the questions for us for that Q&A by using the link in the live chat. There is a pinned comment in the live chat right at the top. And if you open it, there's a link right there, and you can use that to send us questions in a Google form. It's going to make it nice and easy for us to go through them at the end. If you have a question or a topic that you want to be discussed right now, like right now, you want us to stop, you want us to discuss it, and you want to support my work, use the super chat function. It really, really means a lot because you're supporting my work. And look, we're dealing with some controversial topics today, which means that, like most of my videos, this one may be demonetized. So if that happens, that would really suck. But your super chats would make it so that I was still able to earn money from the live stream, which means I can keep doing this. It's how I sustain myself. So please do consider using a super chat and getting your comment or question or topic on the screen right away. Now, all that cleared up, let's kick off. Let's bring Aditya into the live now, and let's find out what the hell has been going on. So it's the switches around. We're in the wrong way around. Welcome, Aditya.
Hi.
So before we kick off, I believe you want to make a quick disclaimer, right? Before we get into the juicy stuff. So before we introduce you and everything like that, do you want to say what you need to say, and then we'll jump right in?
Right. So as a disclaimer, I want to preface this entire conversation by saying that I am not here to represent anyone, right? I speak for myself. What I'm going to say, I think is valid and I think is true, right? And I'm going to give you what I think are very good reasons for it. But I'm not here to represent anyone. I don't speak for anyone else but myself.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it, and I think it's yeah, I think it's obvious, but I think it's also necessary to be said because we're in a world of cancel culture and all these things. People are looking for any excuse to be total assholes to other people. So I appreciate that. So now let's jump in. Then let's do before we kick off with the body of it. Let's do a quick summary. So I'd like you to give us like a 30-second rundown, basically, of kind of who you are, what you're about, what you're kind of focusing on, what your focuses are. Like I've been following you for a while. I think the first message you sent to me was actually about training. Do you remember? Working out
Yeah.
and diet,
Yeah.
and then I think I saw your stuff and I was like, oh, this is actually this is a good account, right?
Yeah, I remember.
So I've known you for a while now, but for anybody who doesn't know you, like, what is your social media about? Like, what are your messages? And tell us what you're about.
Right. So I make YouTube videos nowadays, right? And I focus primarily on veganism and animal rights, right? But I also make videos about religion and atheism and political commentary. So yeah, but my main focus is animal liberation.
Okay. And what's like, what kind of, how would you define your content? So I mean, there's lots of different types of content. There's like entertainment, education, I don't know. There's all different kind of vibes out there. Where would you say you sit in that sense?
Right. So about veganism, right? Mostly, let's talk about that first.
Sure.
I focus on the why of veganism, right? There are people who make videos and content on the how of veganism. How do you do this, right? And I focus on the why part, on the ethics part of it. Why you should be a vegan. And I'm fairly straightforward about it. I don't hold back my punches, so to speak. So yeah, that's a brief summary, I suppose.
So kind of like direct, educational. Would that be fair to say? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you consider any of your content actually, or maybe all of it, but is any of it controversial in your opinion?
In my opinion, I don't think it's controversial. I think what I say is fairly obviously true, right? But I do know that people get offended at what I say, like all across the board on any topic, like really. But I do think that what I'm saying is not intended to offend, like, but it does offend some people. But I suppose that those people will always exist.
And what when you say it's offending some people, I mean, obviously most of our work offends non-vegans, right? But is
Mhm.
your work? Would you say it's just a standard kind of offended non-vegans, or have you been seeing a lot of vegans being offended as well? I mean, we're going to get into some specific examples, but in general,
Right.
are you seeing vegans are getting upset with your work as well?
Right. So it's definitely there are like non-vegans who are, offended at what I say because maybe I'm not sure, right? I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know
Yeah,
why they're getting offended. But they're but they're offended at that I'm saying these kind of things. But there are also vegans who are like, no, your message is too strong. You can't be making comparisons like that. You can't be
yeah.
saying things like that. That drives people away from veganism. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I get that quite a lot actually on pretty much all of my posts on Instagram actually. I gotta be honest with you, man. I don't know what's going on over there right now, and it's mainly Instagram. But your most controversial post, would you agree that it would be the real, the one that I mean
Right.
to clarify, there is the situation we're going to get into here with this woke vegans trying to educate you. It arose off the back of this Instagram post, didn't it? This one that would be would I be right in saying this would be the most controversial one of yours, or do you think there's another one that's more controversial?
Sure, that's the most controversial one.
Okay, so let's. How about we do this then? So we can get into this. Should we take a look at it? Should we let people watch it, and then
Sure.
we can talk about what happened, the ensuing education that came from your misbehavior.
Right, sure, let's do that.
All right, so let's have a look. Let's pull it up. Where's it gone? Okay, it's there. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna put it up on the screen shortly. Global veganism. So this is your vegan specific kind of
Yeah.
activism page that you've made, which I think, by the way, is a really good page. I really like the style you're using here. I really like the swipe across posts that you're
Mhm.
doing. I like all of it. It's really good, and it's going to blow up. I've no doubt about it. It's definitely going to blow up. But for people who haven't seen this, then let's show it now. Then let's show this reel, and let's see if people think it's controversial or not. Your most controversial video. Okay,
Yeah, sure.
cool.
I'm vegan, but I respect people's choices, and so should you. That's like saying I personally don't throw gays off roofs, but I respect people's choices, and so should you. Offended by that comparison? Check out this reel I made earlier. I'm vegan, but I respect.
That's it, right?
Yeah, that's
that's
it.
the that's the whole video.
You know
So
what? Maybe
go
you
ahead.
could play that other reel as well. The
Okay.
one that I
Yeah,
said.
yeah, yeah. Let's do that.
Check that
Let's
out.
find the other one then. So before we get into that one, let's find the other one.
Yeah,
Okay. Where are we up to?
that
One
would be
second.
below. You'll have to
Below, is it?
scroll.
Here. No, no, no.
No, that one.
That one. Yeah,
The
I see that.
second
Yeah.
row.
It's because
Yeah,
I
second row last. Yeah.
got it. All right. Great. So let's play this one.
Vegans need to stop comparing humans to animals. Such comparisons have been used historically to justify racism. These justifications only worked because of the notion that it's okay to torture animals. Guess who's trying to fight that notion? Vegans. By contrast, are you holding on to that notion? That justified racism? Something to think about. Vegans need to stop comparing humans.
Okay. Got it. So those two together, and I guess it kind of like a combination would be, I guess, that would be considered the most controversial points you've made
Yeah.
since
Some
opening
people
this
are
kind of
offended.
this
Yeah.
channel. Yeah, some people are offended. And
I think
let's
it's yeah. Yeah. Go
go
on.
ahead. Sorry, go ahead, man. Go ahead. Open up on that. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah. So like I think there's nothing controversial about this, right? As as I made in that first reel, like the one that I asked people to check out, I made
Yep.
clear that we are not trying to, like, when I make these comparisons, right? I'm not reducing the perceived moral worth of any group of human beings or human beings in general. I'm just raising the moral worth of the moral worth that we should be assigning to non-human animals. It's this quote that I saw go around in the summer on social media. Just because someone else is getting their rights doesn't mean you're losing yours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that people find these comparisons, that they find them extremely offensive. And, you know, to the point where I'll admit to you that I've stopped making them almost completely because of that, because the ensuing nonsense and outrage from people, not from non-vegans as such. I don't really care about non-vegan outrage, because I like that, because then that means that they're actually paying attention. It's good. It means they weren't able to ignore the post. But the reason I stopped doing it is because actually the vegans cause so many problems. It could be a very, very powerful and very successful post. Let's say it gets out to, you know, hundreds of thousands of people. Some of my old posts got out to really, really a lot of people. But the problem, yours was very successful too. But the problem that comes with it, though, is that it gets out to people, but the vegans try to just completely undermine it, and they succeed actually a lot of the time, on my posts at least, because then when you have 10, 20 vegans saying this post is not good and we don't agree with this post, then you have 100,000 non-vegans who are exposed to it looking at those comments and saying, oh, well, I don't need to listen to this anymore because those vegans said it was bad. Do you know what I mean? It completely undermines the post. So I just kind of avoided doing it for that reason, because it's like, well, this is, and it's such a shame because it's shooting ourselves in the foot. And it is a dangerous comparison. I mean, you know that, right? I mean, it is I don't see it as an invalid comparison. You're comparing two forms of abuse, one that was accepted and still is accepted by some communities, right? You know, throwing people off roofs because of the sexual preference they have, that they will have, that they were born with, that they had no choice. They are born that way and they are punished for it. Well, that's exactly the same as is happening to animals, except instead of homophobia, it's speciesism. You know, and I understand why it offends people, but that's, like you said in the other reel, that's what the problem is. It shouldn't offend you, and if it does offend you, you're upholding discriminatory beliefs, right? By being offended by it. So, I feel you. So, let's get on to the real body of this, and let's have a look at what happened then, when you did make that post, and let's have a look at one of the comment strings off the back of it then, and let's find out. Oh, that's not the one. That's for later. All right. Well,
I'm vegan, but I respect people's choices. That one.
Yep.
Looking for the real.
Yes. So to get to the comment, I had it ready to go, but now I'm gonna have to scroll back through. So let's find this comment. Sorry.
If you have them saved, then we can just go through that.
I have it here. Yeah, it's right here.
If you have it saved.
Yeah. So we have two comments to discuss here actually, but let's go for the first one, the one by that this person's an actual vegan, right? So here's the first example of a Westerner trying to educate you on this, and we'll get into why it's important that they're a Westerner, obviously, once we get into the inbox, one of the inbox conversations you had. But let's just take a look at this on the surface and let's discuss it. So basically, this person, so here's why I have an issue with this kind of thinking. People don't grow up in a bubble. Most people are eating meat regularly. Basically, this person's just making excuses for people who are habitually, you know, torturing and abusing animals or paying for the animal abuse, right? Because they're saying, as if it being a habit is somehow an excuse, saying that it's an unrealistic request for people to give up abusing animals, which obviously we disagree with. Saying that most people want to do better for the world, and approaching them with a rhetoric to tell them that they should stop abusing animals is apparently going to push them away. All the same stuff. And then eventually the comparison. If you shame them and compare their choices to throwing gay people off roofs, you will likely offend them and create no change in their diets. So this is something this kind of vibe is something I get over and over again. And I guess this person actually, one second, I'm trying to find the part where she actually came at you from a place of perceived superiority, but I don't think she actually does in this sense. She just basically argues against the tactic, right? Oh, there we go.
This person is about against.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
This person, as far as I remember, was just talking about the tactics, right?
Yeah.
And she says at one point, you know, that, and I found out today, as you pointed out, she's not actually vegan. She's mostly plant-based, as she writes, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this
So
is one. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, she's talking about the tactics, and I'm fine with there being like, there can be different levels of activism, but you just don't step on my toes, I don't step on yours,
Yeah.
right? And you like the soft activist sort of like, and this is not just applicable to veganism, it's about anything, right? They
Yeah.
have to realize that they have a platform because of the more straightforward activists and advocates, right, for anything. um, and like she's making a point about tactics, but that doesn't invalidate the point that I'm making, right? Something can be like, even if it was not useful, right? What I'm
Yeah.
saying, it doesn't invalidate what I'm saying, right? So like something can be a very useless tool to change people's behavior, but that doesn't mean it becomes untrue,
Yeah.
right? So like, and even that part of her criticism is not like valid, because people have gone vegan after listening to me and talking to me, right? So
Yeah.
it's just all over the place. It's incorrect. Like
Yeah.
she's drawing the wrong conclusions, even if she had the right premises, and she doesn't even have the right premises.
Exactly, yeah. And this is, it's so common. It's part of the problem that we have now in unfortunately, it's with our society, with all these advancements in social media and people having a platform which they have done nothing to earn, by the way. You just get given a platform and you can reach hundreds of people, like even hundreds of thousands of people. They get this impression that people need to listen to them and that they somehow know something about something just because they can say it and people can listen. It's a really bad situation we find ourselves in, where people have to do no thinking and no research, but they can actually have people listen and they can share opinions like this, which haven't been properly thought out. And she's saying like it's not comparable to human enslavement. She's saying, and it's basically, it's all human supremacist behavior. Like it's not the same, and we're different, and you can't compare it. And yeah, it's a lot of the nonsense that non-vegans come out with, and it makes sense because she's not vegan. And that's kind of, that was like a kind of like, I don't know, maybe a precursor to the main comment string,
Yeah.
which is this one.
Yeah.
And this is where
Yeah.
it starts to get a bit hairy, isn't it? This is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting and also kind of funny as well, which we'll get to as to what the conclusion of this conversation was. But we'll work up to it. We'll build up to that. So this is by the way, please don't go, if anyone's thinking about this, please don't go and find these people's accounts and do anything silly. They just, these are public comments, but yeah, that's not what we're here for. So please, you may be tempted, but don't do it, please. But anyway,
Don't abuse them or anything.
yeah, I'm sure nobody would who's going to watch this, but you never know who's watching. I guess it's public, isn't it? So, but these are public comments. So at the end of the day, you post this, and this is a risky take, but I still don't think anybody should be attacked. But Kelly, she says, but you should, or they say, sorry, I don't know, you should respect Indigenous people that are often harassed by vegans despite their sustainable relationship with their own land. So she opens up with that and pulls out the Indigenous card. Oh, I liked the comment. And like that, pulls out the Indigenous people card, which actually, I don't know about you, but I see that a lot from both vegans and non-vegans. Have you seen that a lot yourself?
Yeah, I've seen that, right? Like they, first of all, when they do it, right, one really, like when people consume animal products, right, I think that's inexcusable, right? It's a great moral atrocity, but I do think that it's understandable, right, why they're doing it. They've been socially conditioned to do it. It's not an excuse, I'll reiterate that point, but it's understandable why they're doing it. But when people, mostly, right, maybe not this person, but when people bring up this Indigenous people card, what they're doing is they're using the suffering of one group of human beings, and whose suffering is genuine, right? And they're using that suffering for their own greed. Now,
Yeah.
that is neither excusable nor understandable, right? So, yeah, so I'd like to point that. And
Yeah.
as I've written in the comment, right, what I've also noticed there, when people, say Indigenous people are harassed by vegans or something like that, it presents Indigenous people or whatever oppressed group they're talking about and vegans as two separate entities, right? Like as two separate groups, and that's bigoted in my opinion, because like they think that that these people are not morally capable. They don't have the moral capacity to be vegan, and that's bigoted. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's big. This is what we spoke about prior to the live, and what I've mentioned in
Mhm.
videos, and you've mentioned in videos. It's a bigotry
Mhm.
of low expectation, and it's
Right.
something that African Americans have been suffering from for years in the USA. There was I've read in one of my videos I mentioned this as an interview with a black man in the USA, and I think he's a reporter of some sort now. I think he's quite famous there now, and he was saying as a child he was put in the lower classes not because of his performance, but because they just kind of assumed that he would not perform as well in higher classes because he was black, and it wasn't like they were racist. It was that they thought they were doing him a favor because they thought,
Mhm.
well, we don't want to make him upset by the fact that he can't do what the other kids can do. But that is a bigotry, a form of bigotry in itself, even if it's meant compassionately. As I think some vegans actually do believe they're being compassionate when they say, look, we're just trying to help indigenous people. It's not compassion, it's bigotry, because you're altering your message and you're assuming they can't understand the morals behind veganism. That you're assuming they wouldn't make every effort possible to adjust their life once they realize that, wow, actually you're right, animals do deserve moral consideration. You take that chance away from them, and that is bigotry to assume that they wouldn't do it. And I totally agree with you, man. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And to
That's
play
and
devil's, go
about
ahead.
that person, that reporter. That's shocking. And I'd just like to point out that although the intention may be good, right? What like intention matters, right? And the people who do these kinds of things, they do think that they're doing really good work, right? But intention is not the only thing that matters.
Hmm.
What also matters is the effect. And as what happened with that person, right? That reporter, and what people, when these woke vegans sort of talk about indigenous people and vegans separately, their intention might as well be good, right, as you've said, but that's not the only thing that matters, right? Effect matters, and ultimately what they're doing is, I think I'm repeating myself now, but it has to be said, that's bigoted, right? So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're right. Yeah, yeah. I again, I think we're going to agree on a lot of things. So I will try and play the devil's advocate from time to time, so we're not just
Yeah, sure.
we're not just enjoying ourselves and agreeing with each other for the entire time. But no, I completely agree, and it's something. It really, when I realized that this was actually bigotry, it really slapped me across the face and made me. It wasn't nice to realize this. I thought I was being compassionate because I've had these thoughts before where I've thought, oh, I need to be, I don't know, extra nice to this person, or I need to behave differently with this person because they are from this place, or because of this, I need to treat them better or nicer, not better, but, I don't treat people badly, but I mean, I need to make a special effort. And all of these
Treat
things,
them
they're
like a
forms of,
child.
right, exactly. These are all forms of bigotry. They really are, because it's well, you can't respect them enough to just treat them like you treat everybody else. You've got to give them some kind of special treatment, make them feel
Hmm.
even better than everybody else. It is bigotry,
Hmm.
and I don't think enough people see it. And to play devil's advocate here, I can see why they don't see it. I can see why this person here, this Callie, feels that she is doing a good thing. I can totally understand it. Because I used to be there too. I've been in the position where I thought this was good. Like, yeah, this is not against you, but I've seen other people, doing the same thing too, aside from veganism, and I see these types of comments in those scenarios, and I've thought, wow, that's a good for you. Stand up for the indigenous people, or whichever group is being defended, but then you've also, like you said, you've got to consider the other side of this. In that, wait a minute, am I committing an act of bigotry by doing what I'm doing? And in this case, the answer is yes. So let's continue down here and let's see what else we've got. So you responded, and exactly how you said it. I don't think we should read your responses. Actually, I think you should just tell us your responses.
Mm.
Because you know what
It,
you said.
it
And
was a while ago.
okay, okay.
So maybe
Well, I
we
mean,
should go through them.
you covered this. So you say they're not two separate entities. You did say that. Are there no indigenous
Hmm.
vegans? You covered that. There are, but you erase them, which is very important, actually. And then something
Yeah.
again, I think a lot of,
Mm.
I don't want to group people by identity, but it does seem to be mostly white Western vegans who talk about racism and colonialism within veganism more than anybody else. and a lot of them completely ignore the fact that there are a lot of I don't even want to use I don't even want to say POC because I hate that, but there are a lot of
I hate
people
that
out there.
term too. Right?
I
I hate
hate
that
it,
term
man.
too.
It's just
Because like it's
go ahead.
just a
Yeah,
weird umbrella term, right? It's a
yeah.
weird umbrella term. Like for example, what does a South Asian person and a European? I'm not too educated on the ethnicity of Europe, but what
Don't
does
worry about that.
what the difference between the European person and a South Asian person, right? And a South Asian person with, let's say, a South African person, right? These these groups are like as different from like any two groups or any two of these groups are as different from each other as they are from the other one, right? So this weird umbrella term, POC, what does that? Why does it even exist? It's like there are people, and then there are people of color. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very weird, and you've seen people like it's so this is off topic, but look, people of color apparently is now completely accepted in a social way. Everything's accepted, right? POC, person of color, whatever. But colored person will get you fired. Will probably get you arrested in some countries. Will get you put in jail. It'll get
I
this
didn't
video
know that.
demonetized. Benedict Cumberbatch said it in an interview. He said it's great that so many I think he said colored people are getting more positions of power in the film industry and actors and actresses, and he meant it in a purely positive, beautiful way. It was being so nice and so genuine, and he got slammed for saying colored people. But he was like, okay, so I didn't understand what's the new, how do I say it? And they were saying you have to say people of color, and he was it's like, what? Are you serious right now? Oh my
Okay.
God. So the poor
This is what I
guy.
was talking about. This is what I was talking about a moment earlier, right? Intention matters, and also effect also matters. No one is getting hurt, right? But like there's no difference between calling someone a colored, as I see it at least, there is no difference between these two things. So if you're okay with that, if you're saying like the effect of people of color is like it's not a harmful one, if you're going to say that, then the effect of colored person too is not a harmful one, right? What matters here, since effect is a non-variant, right, is the intention. If Benedict Cumberbatch said that, and he was like, I've not watched the video or anything, but if he said, and he seems like a nice guy, so if he says that, right, if he says colored person, and it doesn't mean any malice, that shouldn't be a problem. I feel like some people just sit there waiting to be offended. Like, where can I be offended now? And
Absolutely.
that's weird.
Absolutely. I felt so bad for him, and I watched the interview, and the guy's like, "Wow, he's so nice, and he was being so nice and warm and friendly and supportive, and he gets slammed for one word, like the wrong formation of the sentence, basically. We've got a
It's
super chat.
basically the same thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the way in terms of like how it looks on paper, it's practically the same, but the social consequences are very different. But we have a
Mhm.
super chat, and it's kind of off
Mhm.
topic, but we'll quickly cover it because I think it's a quick answer for you. But Melly, thank you so much for the super chat. She's asking, you have several Instagram accounts. How do you manage them all, and what's the reason for having the different accounts? So I guess if you could I guess we could shoot off,
Yeah.
give a short answer to this, and then maybe we can come back to it later. We'll go over some social media stuff in the Q&A. I think that's a good way of going about it.
Right. So first of all, thank you for that super chat. Right. And I have 3 accounts at this point. Right. But one of them is my personal. Right. That's at Soytheus. And I post just very random stuff there. Right. It's my personal account. One more would be at Global Veganism, the one that's on the screen right now. It's there. It exists because I want to get the message across about animal rights. Right. Um, so there's that. And about the third account, that's Cosmic Rationalist. It I started that account because I had a lot of things to say about astronomy and cosmology, and just my thoughts about these subjects and what I had learned. I want to share it with people. So that account exists for that reason. Although I do think that I have said everything that I had to say on those subjects. So that account exists still. but I'm not posting as frequently there. In fact, I think I've not posted there for a while. So running two accounts is really not that difficult, right? That's Soy Theist and Global Veganism.
Cool. Thank you so much, Emily. And as I said, if you have more questions on that, and use the link in the pinned comment, and we can go more in detail in the Q&A a bit later on. But for now, let's dive back in and let's keep going through this. So your response was also, okay, you're talking about how they were being erased, and I think before we got into the POC discussion, I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh yeah, it's the vegans who keep on kind of going out to try to, let's say, defend what they consider to be people of color, and for some reason not acknowledging that there are many vegans who are
In this group, right?
people of color in these groups. Yeah, and they kind of, a lot of people assume that people of color can't go vegan or won't go vegan because of white vegans, and it's all this. It's very unusual. It's very strange. And there's also this kind of concept that the vegan movement is overwhelmingly white and is apparently some form of white supremacist movement. I hear this as well. These things, which by the way, we don't. I think I've been through this in a bit different live stream, but just as a quick little kind of clarification on that. I personally believe the main reason that the mainstream vegan movement is predominantly white is because it's popular in predominantly white countries. I feel like it's a very rational conclusion to make that the most famous, let's say, vegan activists happen to be white, because also the biggest activist movements happen to be in countries where white people are the majority of the population. I don't feel like that's a very big jump to make rationally. But if you consider, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's fair, right? So like, I really don't have much to add there. Like, it doesn't, as far as I can see, it doesn't matter that, there are a lot of like sort of white vegans, and I'm not even sure if there is any research to prove that, majority of vegans are white. But I think what matters here is the intention and the philosophy of the movement, right? The philosophy of the movement is about ending oppression, right? Like ending a form of oppression, that would be the oppression of non-human animals. I think that's what matters, right? And we have to get the message across. If it is true that there are not a lot of vegans who are not white, right? Then we have to get the message across, right? So I think that's a null point, really, that just point out that a lot of white people, a lot of vegans are white. Like, first of all, where's the proof for that? You can't just look at social media. That's not proof. Then the next point here is that if it is true, right, then we have to get the message across. Like, what's the point of that? It's probably not true. I don't know if it is, but even if it were true, what's your point?
Yeah. And I think another misinterpretation of this is, I like what you said there about, well, social media doesn't count. Like, social media is not, it's not accurate. It's not a scientific way to prove anything. And this is what they're basing it on. People, they say, well, the most famous vegans are like Earthling Ed and James Aspie and Joey Carbstrong, and these guys are white. And it's like, well, okay, that they're well known on social media, but that doesn't reflect them as people. It doesn't mean they represent the movement because they're famous on social media. And if you want to go by social media, and I've made this point before and I want to make it again, I want to make it in every live stream where we get into this topic. If you add up the followers, the subscriber counts of the biggest vegan YouTubers that are not white or male, right? So for example, there's Cheap Lazy Vegan, there is Sweet Potato Soul, there's just two big YouTubers. Both are women of color. Let's say, I'm doing it like this because I don't like saying it. Those two together, I believe, have more subscribers than James, Joey, and Ed. I believe, last time I checked. So where is this overwhelmingly, white social media movement this idea coming from, when there's way bigger accounts out there that are talking about veganism? So it's important to just not that social media even matters in that sense, but even if it did, there's evidence to show that that's this concept that people are saying that it's dominated by white people. It's not true anyway, because some of the biggest celebrities, whatever, influencers are actually, they're vegan and not white. So
Right.
But you
Okay.
said,
I just want to add one more
yeah, sure,
point
sure.
there. Do you know, like, what is the earliest vegan literature that you've ever come across?
I guess there was some Greek philosopher, I think, was talking about the
Okay.
concept of living without exploiting animals, but I can't remember the name, and that would be the one, the earliest I know of.
Right.
But I don't know
Um,
what you, yeah,
like, can you, like, I can't bring it up here, but
sure.
um, can you Google Al-Mari? I'll tell you the spelling for that.
Okay.
A-L
Yep.
space
Yep.
M-A-R-R-I.
Okay. Al-Mari. Is this a
Like, can you check?
Saudi Arab philosopher? Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, yeah, right. Can you just check when he lived, right?
Um, it looks like a long time ago. In 1010, he was in Syria. Oh, he was born in 973.
Yeah, right. So that's a long time ago, right? And
Yeah.
that is the or like he has a poem, right? I don't quite remember the name of the poem, right? But in it he makes the case for veganism, right? It's
Okay.
not just vegetarianism, which one might expect, but it's veganism, right? He talks about how he doesn't consume the milk or that was meant for babies and all that sort of stuff. So
Hmm.
it's not that people there are only white people who are doing this, and it's not that it started off as a white people thing. I don't know how it started off, but there's no good reason to say that it did. And even if it did, does it really matter? What we are focused on here is ending oppression. So yeah, I think that's the fact that people like philosophers like Almari exist, right? That's
Yeah.
interesting, and I think that people should know that.
Yeah. I mean, I googled the Al Mari vegan poem,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's come up. So I mean, we won't read poetry on here. I think people can check it out themselves. I'll take your word. A few people have commented saying there's this, they know who this person is, and there's a famous poem. So it's something I didn't know, and it's again, it's not that it should matter, but to some people these things do matter for some reason. So there you go. It's a little bit of a kind of a debunking in a way, isn't it? And let's
Mhm.
continue then with this post. Let's get, because we've got some stuff to get to here. We've not even got to the,
Yeah.
let's say, I don't want to say the juiciest bit, but it is the juiciest bit. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
It's the most interesting bit anyway is coming. So we got, okay. So you talk about, I've already mentioned that, how these people also, they say things like POC, you shouldn't ask the POC to be vegan, and you covered that here as well. Propagating the myth that only white people can be vegan, which again we've just been through actually, so we've covered most of this already, which is really good. You said her statement is racist because of that, because she's made that bigotry of low expectation, which is accurate, and she's trivializing the suffering of innocent individuals, the non-human animals, by talking about them like resources, which is very accurate. So that was your response. She came back and said, she never said they aren't individuals, that animal suffering is good, but she says vegan activism often comes across as furthering white supremacy and not acknowledging indigenous people who aren't vegan and do more to protect the environment than your average white LA vegan is racist. So she's accusing you of doing that, right?
Mhm.
That's, let's be clear here. By that statement there, she's not saying it as like, oh, in general. She's like, no, it's your post, and she thinks that your post is in some way not acknowledging indigenous people, and that you're not doing anything more than the average white LA vegan, and that makes you racist. And that you're also ignoring that due to colonialism, they tend to be in food deserts where a healthy vegan diet isn't possible. And then she says, now, if indigenous people want to correct me, I'm all ears. This is just my
Yeah.
understanding of their experience, right? And then she's
Right.
saying, ask whoever you want to be vegan, and also as a queer vegan, this is disgusting. So there's so many things that we need to get into here. So let's start with the furthering white supremacy. Your activism comes across as furthering white supremacy. What how do you respond to that?
I maybe like my profile picture there is just text, right? If someone said that to my face, I just show them my skin color. Like, look at my face, right?
Yeah.
I'm definitely not furthering white supremacy here. But what I do want to say here is that she is furthering something called human exceptionalism, and um, the social media terms, I suppose, for that would be she's furthering human supremacy, right?
Yeah.
She's she says that animals are like, she is not saying that animals are individuals, but she is though, right? She is talking about them as though they were resources, right? Like they're talking about the protecting the environment and all that stuff. So yeah, about that white supremacist part, I think that's bunk. I think it should be obvious to anyone that I am not a white supremacist. So yeah.
Yes, I don't. It's a strange question to ask you, to be honest. But then, playing the devil's advocate, what they would say is that you have internalized white supremacy. That's what they would say by you saying I'm not, but they think you
Mhm.
are. You're just internalized. That's what it is. What would you say to that then? Playing the devil's advocate here, because obviously I don't
Right,
believe
right,
that, but
right.
that's the next line, isn't it? Really, it's the next one they would come out with.
Well, first of all, the point of white supremacy, right, would be like, that there's this one race of people like who are like superior to everyone else. Now, what she is doing there, like when she's making claims like you're furthering white supremacy or that you have internalized white supremacy, these are like really heavy claims, right?
Hmm.
And there's something called the Sagan standard. It's called extraordinary claims require extraordinary justification, right?
Okay.
Um, or extraordinary evidence, right? The ECREE. So they've made claims for sure, right? There's no justification, there's no evidence, and I can just point out one more. I don't know what this is called. But what can be asserted without evidence or justification can be dismissed without evidence or justification. So I think
Absolutely.
that's bunk. There's no justification. There needs to be no justification from my side.
I think that's so powerful, and I absolutely agree with you. I had a similar situation on my Facebook where somebody made the same things about me. They said that I was what was it now? They called me a sexist. They told me that I'm serious. They called me a sexist. They told me that I was also some kind of white supremacist, and they said something else. And I said, "That's great, cool. You've made three claims here. So this, and this. Now I'll wait for you to explain to me and show your evidence for those things." Complete disappeared, never saw that person again. It's incredible because, as you said, it should be what you've just said is I've never heard that before, and I think it's so, my god, I wish people would pay attention to this, because what happens in the modern world is, right, if there's no evidence for something you've apparently done or said, or whatever, that you are a certain thing like a white supremacist, then right, you shouldn't have to provide evidence to dismiss the claim then, because there's no evidence in the first place. But what tends to happen instead is the accusation itself is enough for people to believe that you are, and you've got to
Mhm.
prove that you're not.
Yeah.
That's how it's going, right? And it's
Mhm.
also it's especially like this within the, well, not within all of the vegan community, but within some very specific areas of the vegan community. This is the attitude, and this is part of this attitude here that we're seeing, and we'll get into that as well. This is all to come. We're going to really get into that in a deeper way. But the next accusation is that you weren't acknowledging Indigenous people who aren't vegan, and yeah, so you weren't acknowledging Indigenous people who aren't vegan, apparently, with this post. This is, I don't understand why she's made this jump, because you didn't even talk about Indigenous people in the post. It was nothing to do with specifically against or for Indigenous people. It wasn't even a topic
It
of
didn't
this
even
post.
mention
It's
it. Didn't
it's
even
such a
mention it.
strange claim that you. Anyway, go on. What would you say to this then? How was your response to that?
Right. So, yeah, but I'm not. It's like I said. I think she's responding to that part about me saying you're erasing vegan indigenous people, right? I think it's a
Right.
response to that,
Could
although
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
we could not be sure. But when I make that, right, when I make that claim that you're erasing vegan indigenous people, I'm not saying that all indigenous people are somehow vegan. There is no group by ethnicity that you could find who are all vegan, and that is not a function of a problem in the part of that ethnicity or that whatever group you're talking about. It is a function of the fact that we live in a very speciesist society, right? So any group that you'll find, right, you'll find that there are mostly non-vegan, right? And that is not a problem on the part of that community, of that group. That is a problem on uh, the problem lies in our speciesistic world, right? So it like It applies to all groups who are living within this world.
Yeah, totally, totally. And this idea that you're, well, we'll keep on that. We'll come back. We're going to keep going forward with this. So the protecting the environment part. I mean, yeah, okay, yeah. Let's clear this up. So that apparently, because you're not doing enough to protect the environment, you're not doing any more than apparently a white LA vegan, which, by the way, in itself is a racist thing to say. Like, white LA vegan isn't it doesn't define individual people. That's putting people, that's grouping
I
people
think
based on their
I think
ethnicity
your
and
audio just
where they're
got cut
from.
off. I'm
Oh,
not sure if it was on your end or my end.
basically, yeah,
You're
just
talking about how it's racist. That's the
yeah,
part.
it's yeah, it's an incredibly it's well, it's I don't know if racist is the right word, but basically what they're doing is stereotyping individuals based on the skin tone and where they're from, right? So if you're from LA and you're white, apparently you're not doing enough and
Mhm.
you're a racist. It just that's it, blanket statement. It doesn't take into account anything else other than that. So, but anyway, you're apparently doing as much as one of these people, and that makes you also a racist. And yeah, I honestly, actually, at this point, I'm feeling like there's not really. I feel like it's stupid to even ask you for a response to that. So it's such a blatantly
Okay.
obvious thing that you know to even go over. But you can respond to it if you want. But I understand if you don't, because I feel like it might be a little bit of a waste of time because it's
About,
quite clear that you're not a racist.
about the white LA vegan part.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to address that environmental aspect to it. I think
Sure.
environmentalism is good. I think it's important. But that's not what veganism is about, right? At least it's not about mainstream environmentalism. I'll get to one specific point that was made to me, which I think is good, but it's not about environmentalism. We're not doing this for the sake that it's good for the environment. It's good, but that's just a sort of like a bonus add-on, right? If you're vegan, you also help the environment. Good, right? That just gives you more of a reason to be vegan. But that's not the reason why we're doing this, right? We're doing this for animal liberation, right? We're doing this and we're asking people like don't abuse animals, right? Don't oppress animals,
Yep.
right? So that's why we're doing this. And I said about I'll speak about one point. The only part of environmentalism that is related to veganism would be like we're trying to end animal suffering, unnecessary animal suffering, right? Environmentalism uh, does, in a way, mitigate wild animal suffering, right? So there's that point, and I think that's an important point to make. But even without that, even if it didn't reduce wild animal suffering, there's still a very good reason to be vegan, right? It is for we don't even know the number for sure. It's for the 73 billion land animals per year who are killed because people just want some temporary taste pleasure. And that's just land animals, right? Uh, I don't even know the number for fish. I think it's in the hundreds of billions, maybe trillions.
Yep.
And and before we proceed, I just want to like put a frame, a way to frame this, like to imagine this, what these numbers mean. Um, so we talk about, and we'll get into this, like the worst crimes that what society recognizes as worst crimes, killed like millions of human beings, and that's just horrible. That's a huge number, right? But what does a million mean? So, like you can imagine it like this: a million seconds, right? A million seconds is 11.5 days. Okay,
Yep.
so there's that. That's a lot of seconds, man. Right? That killed a lot of people, and that's horrible. Now imagine what a billion is. A billion seconds is 31.5 years, right? So just imagine the scale of this. So yeah, I'd like to point that out there.
It's a yeah. I think a lot of people, well, not a lot of people. I mean, most people, if not all people, really don't really consider that what a million means. Even a million, or the difference between a million and a billion. Which people seem to think
Yeah.
it's not much. It's like it's an incredible amount. Let's
Okay,
close back.
let's
Go ahead.
also like just put in what a trillion means there. A trillion
Sure.
is obviously a billion times 1,000, so that's 31,500 years. Let's just give a little more perspective, right? A million seconds ago, that's 11.5 days ago, nothing much was different for most people in this world. 31,000 years ago, dogs didn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how you have to like think of this. Like that's the number of individuals who have the same willingness to avoid suffering as you and I, and as anyone else watching this video. They have the same willingness to avoid suffering, and maybe more. And we could talk about that later if time permits. But at least they have the same willingness to avoid suffering as you and I. And I don't think we should be imposing suffering onto them because we want some temporary taste pleasure. That just seems unbelievably cruel.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to argue. Well, maybe some anti-vegans would argue with that, but nobody in here is going to argue with you on that, and it's not me, obviously. So let's push on and let's talk about the next accusation that was made. You're ignoring that due to colonialism, the people tend to be in food deserts where a healthy vegan diet isn't possible, and goes on to say, if Indigenous people want to correct me, I'm all ears. This is just my understanding of their experience. So you've been accused of ignoring colonialism, and again, she said, okay, but if someone wants to correct me, an Indigenous person, I'm open to listening. So tell us now, Aditya, as an Indian, born and raised in India, how is it exactly that you're ignoring colonialism? I'd love to understand this.
Yeah, right. But before we get into that, I'd
Yeah,
like to
sure.
make one like sort of pseudo valid point that she makes there, that a lot of people are in food deserts who don't have access to vegan food. I think that's not just Indigenous people, right? There are
Of
all
course,
kinds
yeah.
of people in food deserts, right? And that's well, that's unfortunate. That's disheartening. And we're not like, and for these people, right? For these specific people who don't have a choice, right? We cannot hold them morally accountable because morality requires that you make a choice, right? So we are not going to ask these people, like, what we're going to do is we're going to like ask anyone and everyone who can be vegan to go vegan, right? So that it becomes more accessible for everyone else, right? So I think that's like a valid point in within all the mess, right? And it's not just applicable to indigenous people.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Just
like there
I'd
are
like to
indeed
make
people in food deserts. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make a comment here as well, people asked me the same question when I was in India. I had a lot of Indians ask me, well, they said, okay, maybe I can be vegan. Well, not maybe. They said I can go vegan. That's true. But what about the people living in slums? They can't go vegan, or even not even in the slums, even like a step up from that. They still couldn't afford a lot of the things. To which the response would be that they in 99% of these cases, the cheapest foods are plant-based foods, right? It's in 99% of cases. But even so, even if that wasn't the case, then of course the point is that the more people that adjust, the more systems that start to adapt to a plant-based food system, the more easy it's going to be for individuals that previously couldn't access it to access it. The system needs to change before the lowest in the system are going to be able to reap any benefits of it. If the system is developed on animal agriculture and the whole system is based on that, then of course for some people they're going to be in a situation where it's that's all they can access, right? Is products of animal agriculture. But that's because of the system that they're in, that is holding animal agriculture as something that needs to continue and that should be progressed, right? But once that is gone and all that's left is a plant-based food system, then of course plant-based foods are going to be way more accessible to everybody, which they already are. Let's be honest, we're talking about tiny little minorities here when we talk about these people that literally have no choice but to be not vegan. But let's focus back in, then let's get to the bottom of this, the colonialist point, right? So she's saying that you're ignoring colonialism. So I know you've got some information on this, so why don't you open up now and tell us why this is such a ridiculous thing for a Western person to tell somebody born and raised in India and currently still living in India that they're ignoring colonialism.
So I've lived in India my entire life, right? So basically my entire life I've been living in the after effects of colonialism, right? And this person probably hasn't known a single moment of colonialism, right? So I think that's strange. And I want to people don't take the colonization of India very seriously, right? And so it's like, okay, you're Indian, but it's bad. But that's the general attitude I see when we talk about the colonization of India. So I just like to point out what's what the reality is, right? So after the let's just talk about the British colonization of India, right? I suppose it's only accurate we're having this discussion. But yeah, so when Britain came to India, right? Let's talk about the looting that took place first. When Britain came to India, right? India contributed to 23% of global GDP, right? That's a lot, right? India alone contributed like 23%. That's like almost one fourth, right? And by the time they left, right? By the time they left, okay, I'll tell you what it is, like how much they contributed, like how much India contributed after they left. But how much do you think it would be? Like when Britain came, it was 23%. How much do you think it was after, when they left?
You're putting me on the spot here. I honestly couldn't tell you. I really couldn't
Yeah,
tell you.
right. Okay, so when Britain left, right, it was just over 3%. So from
Three.
23%, just over 3%, 3 point something, right? So so when Britain arrived, right, it was 23%, and it came down to just over 3%, right? And like people are going to ask, "Oh, where are you getting these numbers from, right? You seem to be like pulling these numbers from out of nowhere, are these conspiracy theories? No, these are according to the works of British economic historian Angus Madison, right? And I could cite the work here. It's the World Economy Development Center of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, 2006, right? So the British colonization of India, like they came to a country which was like really prospering, right? And then they left it as the poster child of poverty, right? So there's the looting part, right? And like the British colonization of India also caused the unnecessary deaths of a lot of people. And what's that number? The number is 30 to 35 million. 30 to 35 million. And I'm not going to tell you, like, I'm not going to compare it here to other atrocities. People already know it. 30 to 35 million is a lot of Indians who died as a matter of written British policy, right? And like again, where am I getting this number from? This is according to the works of American historian and philosopher William James Durant, right? So like millions of tons. Like, and how did this happen? So this happened as a consequence of British-induced famines, right? So millions of tons of wheat, right, were exported from India to Britain, like while famine raged in India, right? And like you could say, oh, they're not killing anyone, right? Like that's not killing. But as is now understood, right, famines like are not caused by a lack of food, right? They're caused by a lack of access to food. Distribution is key. And this is according to the works of Nobel laureate Amartya Sen, right? He says that there never has been a famine in a democracy with a free press. Now, again, the work that you could look up is Poverty and Famines, published in Oxford Clarendon Press, 1982, right? And so, just hold on 1 minute.
It's okay. Yeah. Yeah. No problem. This is all, by the way, just whilst you're taking that break, just to make you aware that none of this is taught in British school. By the way, British school
Yeah,
system,
yeah,
none of it.
I'm
Like
aware.
literally, none of it. It's incredible.
I'm aware.
Yeah. The first time I
So,
learned about any of these things was actually when I was in India. Like I was actually in India, and then yeah. But yeah, continue. Go ahead.
right, so there were like this huge famines, right? And I could list them. It's a short list. But they killed a lot of people, 30 to 35 million, right? So there was the Bengal famine, 1770. There was the Madras famine, 1782 to 83. The Chalisa famine, 83 to 84. Dojibara famine, 91 to 92. 1791 to 92. Agra famine, 1837 to 38. Orissa famine, 1866. The Bihar famine, 1873 to 74. The Southern Indian famine, 1876 to 77. The Indian famine is called the Indian famine, 1896 to 1900. The Bombay famine, 1905 to 1906. And the most notorious of the bunch, the Bengal famine of 1943 to 44, which killed 4 million people in that short span of time, right? So like while people were dying, right, in India, in Bengal, during the Bengal famine, um, Winston Churchill, as a matter of written policy, diverted wheat supplies from India to Britain to store as reserved stockpiles as people were dying, right? So, and when conscience-stricken British officials wrote to Churchill that people are dying, what on earth are you doing here? Churchill remarked, I can't believe he actually said that. He said, "Why hasn't Gandhi died yet?" Right? So there's that, and like some people don't like Gandhi, and that's a whole other issue. But I think we can all agree it was not Winston Churchill's place to remark, "Why has Gandhi died yet?"
No, of course not.
Right? So, like racism and violence and death were the reality of the colonial experience in India, right? It killed a lot of people, right? So there's that. So people, as far as I can tell, don't take the colonization of India very seriously. And I want to make people understand, no, this truly is one of the worst. It's right up there with one of the worst things that has ever occurred, and one of the worst moral atrocities. It's right up there, right? So there's that. Now, so yeah, I do know what colonialism, the feeling the after effects of colonialism is, and I know it like from one of the worst examples of it, right? One of the most severe ones, and I'm not trying to invalidate any other experience here, but yeah, it's not that it's not a significant one. It's a significant one. It caused a lot of suffering, right? And I live in the after effects of it. Now, I live in India, but that's not the end of my identity, sort of, right? Within India, right, it's not that like perhaps Western people try, some Western people, I wouldn't want to generalize it like that. Some Western people think, bigotry and discrimination is only a problem here. In those countries, they're just all equals, you know. So I'm from the northeastern part of India, right? And the northeastern part, like this part of the country is sort of like marginalized, right? And I don't want to make this seem more severe than it actually is, but it's a reality that the northeastern states are marginalized. They're treated as the others, sort of,
Yep.
right? And I could just give you like a few examples of this, right? So so this last year there was this law passed, this act passed. It's called the Citizenship Amendment Act, right?
Yep.
I think it's an idiotic act. You were here when that was done.
Yeah. I was there when they were shooting at people in Delhi and arresting people and storming student housing and stuff. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
It was just horrible. I think that's an idiotic law, and perhaps you know why there was this huge protest to it. Like one part of it,
Yep.
the Citizenship Amendment Act would fast track the naturalization process for people belonging to basically every other religion except Islam. So that's a problem right there, right? That's anti-Muslim bigotry. And it also wouldn't fast track the naturalization process for atheists, right? Such as myself, if I were from another country. So there's that. But there was also this other point which is not spoken about in the national media, and maybe as a consequence, you have not heard of it. The Citizenship Amendment Act, right, if it would, as it has passed, right, it would bring in people from three different countries, right, and one of them being Bangladesh, right, and if there were like a lot of immigrants from Bangladesh, that would put they would come into the northeastern states, okay, and that would put a lot of economic stress on the northeastern states, which like cannot be handled right now, right? Like we are already struggling to look after the people that already exist here. We can't possibly be taking in more, like at least not just if you just put them all in northeastern states, which is what probably will happen. So there's this part which is not in the national media, but it did make it like there was this debate I saw, right? And in that debate, there is this girl from the northeast. I think she's from Assam, right? The state I'm from. I'm not sure, but she's from the northeast. and she's like arguing for this thing. It would destroy the economy. We cannot have this. Like, we cannot have so many immigrants coming in. That would be a consequence of the CAA. And this other girl who's from Delhi, she says, like, how many of you here are from the Northeast? And because, and then she says, like, we accepted you. Like, you're from the Northeast, and we accepted you in Delhi, right? Why are you not accepting these Bangladeshi people who are, also immigrants?
Wow.
There's a difference there, right? So they're not seeing that, right? That's just one anecdote. And so yeah, that's the kind of othering sort of that Northeastern people experience
Yeah. Yeah.
in India. Just to give you one more example, perhaps you'll not see this on my face exactly, but Northeastern people, it's not so obvious on my face, but
Sure.
Northeastern people do look different from,
Yeah.
the typical image of what when you imagine an Indian person, right? As a consequence of this, right, I think that also plays into why like sort of othered, right?
Yeah.
And when this is more recent, when the coronavirus pandemic started, right, there was this this huge problem of people just calling people from the Northeast like a coronavirus, like that became a slur, sort of, right?
Yeah.
You're the coronavirus, you're COVID, and they use racial slurs. And like it got to a point when Northeastern people, students mainly from the Northeast, were being spat on. Yeah, so that's another anecdote. So we could go on there. Like, I could give you
Yeah.
many anecdotes, but there's that. So there's colonization of India. So I know the colonial experience, right? But I also know like sort of a marginalization within this, like, let's say, marginalized group, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a minority by any sense, but it's a marginalized like experience, right?
Absolutely.
Now, within Northeastern India, right? Northeastern India is 8 states, right? I'm from Assam. In Assam, like, there are like sort of like general Assamese people, right? That's all right, and there are like smaller tribes, right? And some of these tribes are indigenous to the region. Right? That's the key word, indigenous, right? I'm a member of one such tribe, right? I'm the descendant of
Yeah.
one such tribe, right? I think that's the relevant part, right? I'll
Yeah.
see if I
Yeah.
have anything else to say here. So yeah, I'm the descendant of the indigenous group of this region, right? So and within Assam, right? Um, there's the I already said this, right? So I know there's 3 levels, right? I know the
Yeah.
colonial experience. I know what it feels like to be othered within the colonial experience. And this is not as severe, right? But it still exists. It's a minority within, again, that minority,
Yeah.
right? So I know the 3 levels that this person perhaps doesn't. So they said they won't listen to an indigenous person. Right? Going
Yeah.
back to that original comment now,
We're here.
they
Yeah.
would listen. They would listen to an indigenous person. It's right there now. Yeah,
Yep. There it is. Now, if an indigenous person wants to correct me, I'm all ears. And then what
yeah. I
happened?
then corrected her.
What happened when you
Yeah,
corrected her?
she blocked me.
She blocked you.
Yeah, she said that she's all ears to indigenous people, and then she blocks me when I,
Yep. When you explained basically everything you've just said now is just in this comment, and then straight after that she blocked you. So you know what you said, and I by the way, just before we go on, that I really appreciate all of that information you just provided, and I feel like I'm so happy that there were so many people in here to watch that, because I agree with you. People don't know the situation in India. I spent around 12 months in India in total, and I left knowing maybe a scratch of the surface of the situation in India. India is so complicated, and all the different forms of discrimination between the people in India, that all the different racism and the casteism and the just based on where you're from, and like you said, the way that you look, or not so much you, but there are people in the Northeast, they look more. I would say more comparable. Don't tell me if I'm being offensive, but more comparable to say the countries like China, Thailand, that kind of look. Let's say, I don't know how to describe it without sounding like I'm being offensive, but it's less of an typically Indian look, right? And there's racism between the people based on something so, and it's not even noticeable really. And, like I've met people from the Northeast, people from all over the country, and it's not like you specifically can notice that. But if you look really hard, you will. And people are racist because of that to each other. And you know, so there's so many complicated things within India that I only scratched the surfaces. And I really appreciate you opening that up a lot more and showing us more what's going on there. And it makes it especially more ridiculous as to this person in the West who doesn't have a fucking clue. Like I swear, by the way, I know you're not into that, but I swear on here. And she doesn't have a fucking clue about any of that. And she doesn't know who you are, clearly. She's assumed, I suppose, that you're in the West, right? That you're maybe not in, you know, that you're an Indian raised in the West. So she thinks, okay, I can tell him he doesn't know colonialism. He doesn't know this. He doesn't. How can you assume this about somebody? And it's just such an epidemic that we're going through right now, where people make these baseless assumptions about people they know nothing about and go and say things like this to somebody who is, you know, with your lived experience, which, you know, I think you said earlier, your lived experience is not what you're all about. Obviously, it's not, your identity doesn't make you, but at the same time, your situation, your identity, oh, I've liked the comment, sorry. Your identity, your situation in this sense, it needs to be highlighted, because this person's making these ridiculous accusations that are just so stupid when you realize your lived experience, you know. You know, that's the point here, right? That's the key point. It's the point of this whole live stream, is just to highlight how fucking stupid that is for someone to say that to anyone, really, not specifically to you, but to anyone, without fully understanding who they are, what they're about, where they're from, what they've been through. To make an assumption like that they don't understand colonialism, they're promoting racism, they're promoting white supremacy. What the fuck are you talking about? Based on one Instagram post. How did we get here, man? How did we get to this point?
Right. So about the, like, I just like to, I think it's important to be said here.
Sure.
About that Northeastern people looking different. I'm not sure if it's like accurate to say that, you know, they look
Okay.
like Chinese sort of. I don't think that's an accurate description.
That's fine. Yeah, I didn't really know how to describe, to be honest, but you could do a better job than me. You describe it better for me. Like I said, I didn't want to offend anybody, but I was trying to find, I don't know, a comparison that made sense. But yeah, go. You please correct me on that.
Intention matters. So yeah, I don't think you're a racist. I'd like to put that on.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
So I think the way you can describe how Northeastern people look, right, is like people in like Western India, right? It's not that they have like that's the Indian look, right? Although people imagine that, right?
Yeah.
That's not the Indian look, because there is no Indian look, right? Okay. So like the people in the Northeastern part are like sort of a somewhere a mixture, right? Like is between what you'd see in like East Asian countries, right, and what you'd see in like what you imagine would be on like the central part of the western part of India, right? And that it's not that that's the on one end you have the on one end you have the Indian look, on one end you have the Chinese look, and they're like sort of like Northeastern people sit somewhere in between. No, on the one end you have the North Indian or the Western Indian look, and on the one hand you have maybe the typical East Asian look that you would imagine, and Northeast Indians just look somewhere in between, and that's just as Indian of a look as it gets, right?
Of course.
So yeah, I think that's a better way to describe it.
Yeah, thanks for correcting that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I was finding it hard to get the words out. It's a little awkward for me to try to, you know, I wouldn't want to, like, I'm trying to explain, but it's hard to find the right words, you know, at sometimes. So I'm glad you corrected me on that one.
Right.
And yeah, go ahead.
I think there was something else I wanted to say, but I kind of forgot. They have Indigenous people. Can you like scroll through this comment?
Yeah, let's go have another closer look then. So we've got, well, your comment, you mean, or her comment?
No, her comment. The first. So she was
the first comment. Okay.
No, not the first one. The last one that we were discussing about all being all ears.
Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, if Indigenous people want to correct me, I'm all ears. This is just my understanding of their experience, at least in the Americas. She says, the last comment there.
Oh yeah, okay. I think I made that point in the comment as well. I said like like, do you like, are you all ears now, or do you only specifically listen to some indigenous people in some specific part of the world, and who also have to agree with you? And this brings me back to this point that I want to make. Like, when people say like these things, right? They say, I listen to people of color. Like, they use the term people of color, right? So I'm
Yeah,
saying they say it. Listen to people of color. Like, listen to indigenous people. Listen to minorities. These people listen to the ones they agree with, right? They're
absolutely.
using these marginalized groups as political tools to get like to get their message across,
Yeah,
like what they think is valid, right? Like,
absolutely.
they're using these groups as political tools, and I think that's not good. Let's put it that way.
It's horrible, and this I've also again I've got another experience of this. That's so I did a live stream with a girl called Mariana, who is she is a part black, part Mexican. Her mom or dad is black, and her mom or dad is Mexican, and so she as you know a unique experience of being a part of, let's say, two what would be considered to be oppressed groups in America: Mexican people and black people. Okay, now she holds the opinion, and she'll say it's factual. Actually, she'll go as far as saying it is factual that she is not oppressed in America, and neither is any of her family and none of her friends. She will say that, and when these the kind of woke vegans were attacking her for saying these kind of things, or for the similar things that you're going through, but kind of also different at the same time, like very different, but kind of the similar vibe, the similar area, let's say, that we're covering now. We did a full live stream. We went through all pages of this post that someone had made about white supremacy, and she was just, you know, debunking each part of it and how it's just ridiculous and it's nonsense and it's all clickbait crap and all this stuff. Anyway, I posted that in a vegan group, saying, hey guys, like, you know, everyone needs to see this. This is a woman of color, and she's saying that this is all bullshit, right? So you need to listen. Do you know what happened? It got removed. It got removed, deleted from the group. Apparently,
Right.
it's not appropriate. And
I
even
expect that.
before it was removed, a load of
Mhm.
vegans were saying that I'm not going to watch this. This is just bullshit. They were saying she's got internalized racism, and she only came on to do this with you because she has that internalized racism, or you convinced her to do this. You pushed her to say these things, and all they just couldn't understand that in their eyes that POC could ever possibly say anything like that. They just wouldn't listen, completely rejected it. So this is not the first time I've seen this, and then now it's happened to you, and it's going to keep happening because you don't fit the agenda and what you're saying. You know, I guess you're proud of that, and so is she, and so are many other people out there who are just sick of being told that they are a this, so they can't do this, or they are a that, so they should believe this. It's people are sick of it, man. It's so
Right.
sick, isn't it?
Mhm. Okay. That reminds, like, now I remember what I was going to talk about.
Go ahead, yeah.
Let's just go in there. I talked about discrimination in India, right? And I just want to point out that the kind of discrimination that I described is not the only kind, right? It
Sure.
should be obvious, but yeah, there are other kinds of discrimination. There are, and I'll list these. There is anti-Muslim bigotry, which is it's not an India-specific problem, right? It exists world over, and but it's a problem. It exists, and like, people shouldn't get the impression that like, he talked about this kind of discrimination. That's the only kind of discrimination that exists in India. No, there is
Yeah.
anti-Muslim bigotry, and again, the similar kind of vibe there, right? There's this, like, that, you know, like, oh, but Muslims eat meat, right? But Muslims eat that. Like, they're again erasing vegan Muslims who indeed exist. I think
Yeah.
you've done a live stream with someone
Oh
who's
man, there's
yeah,
so much of the anti-Muslim in within the vegan movement in India. Unfortunately, I kept seeing it again and again. Sometimes it wasn't so clearly anti-Muslim, but it was like a lot of people wouldn't say straight up I'm anti-Muslim, but they would just have anti-Muslim sentiments when it came to animal rights. And it was so sad to keep seeing it pop up over and over again, and almost in a lot of the places we visited, not every place. I met some fantastic, amazing people, obviously, but yeah, it was quite prevalent. Yeah, it was quite prevalent within the vegan movement, which is really disappointing because there were vegan Muslims in India, and we worked with quite a few of them, and Yeah, it does erase them. It does make them like as if they don't exist or shouldn't exist, right?
Right. And I just want to put a point of clarification there, just so that
Sure.
someone doesn't take this clip and vegan admits there is anti-Muslim sentiments. So when we're talking about anti-Muslim, that anti-Muslim part, right? You're talking about how they are again treated with the soft bigotry of low expectations, right? Is
Exactly.
that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
more or
there's
less. Yeah, more or less that. Yeah, because of their
when you're talking
religion,
about
they won't go vegan, kind of thing. That's what I'm
yeah.
talking about. Not like
But there are
anti-Muslim, but yeah,
yeah,
like soft
but,
bigotry of
but
low
there are
expectation.
there
Yeah.
are there are vegan Muslims, and when you don't when you talk about it like Muslims cannot be vegan, that's again the soft bigotry of low expectations. I want to mention another form of discrimination that exists within India. It's called casteism, right? It's a system of hierarchy, right? It puts some people on the top. It puts some other people somewhere in between, and puts some other people like right at the bottom, right?
Yep.
And that's again a real problem, right? And that in itself is a real problem that needs to be combated, right? But there's again, you again see the soft bigotry of low expectations there. You'll see that like those who are perceived to be at the bottom, they're not actually at the, like there's nothing genetically like different, right? So there's this pseudo hierarchy that some people created a long time ago, and it's being maintained, and it's a problem. But those who are at the bottom, right, of that perceived hierarchy, they're like I think we can, yeah. So they're called Dalits, right?
Yeah.
And like people talk about Dalits, and like that again, this will pop up again. They'll say, "Oh, but Dalits eat meat, right? Dalits eat animal products, and your veganism is caste-based, right? Like that's caste-based, right? Like
Yeah.
race-based, caste-based, right? Your veganism is caste-based." I mean, no, it's not. There are Dalit vegans, and in fact, it's very interesting. The most of the vegans I know, like in my own, like amongst my in India, right? So a lot of them through social media. Most of them, in fact, like 90% of them are like Dalits, right? Who are perceived to be Dalits, right? And again, there is no actual difference there, right,
Yeah.
between Dalits and other castes, right? It's just a perceived. So it's not an actual difference, but it manifests as an actual social problem, right? So again, I'd like to point that out. But yeah, again, there's again this soft bigotry of low expectations where people say like, yo, these people can't be vegan. You're asking them to be vegan. Therefore, your activism is casteist. No, it's not. It's not casteist. It's not racist. It's not anti-Muslim. It's none of that. It's an effort to try to end oppression. Like be honest here. Like don't use their suffering first of all as
Yeah.
a tool for your own greed, and stop erasing the vegans within those communities.
Absolutely.
That's again not good. Like that's horrible.
Both vegans and non-vegans do this, and not only to Indians, and in India they do it to like we talked about indigenous people in the West. They do it to people of, God, I keep saying it, but I don't want to say it, but people of color in the West as well.
You can say racial minorities. I think that's a more
Racial
useful.
minorities. Okay, thank you. That's much better. Yeah, thank you. So
Yeah,
racial
it's more
minority.
relevant,
Of
right?
course it
Like
is. Yeah.
if you had like African people in India, like, as there are, right, immigrants, and like if you say people of color, what the hell does that mean? Indians are also considered people of color.
In India,
Um,
yeah, exactly. How would that
right.
wouldn't make any sense? Yeah.
So that's not a useful term, but racial
No,
minorities, right? That's a useful term.
makes sense. Yeah, racial
And
minority.
so if Africans face discrimination in India, right? You can say racial minorities face discrimination in India. Fair point. So
Yeah.
people of
No,
color
so it
is
makes
not.
sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. But this is happening with racial minorities in a lot of countries, and a lot of vegans and non-vegans alike are trying to. I don't know why the vegans do it out of a sense of, um I don't know, trying to be a nice vegan, trying to be or maybe it could be for like some kind of fame thing, or trying to get, trying to get support, brownie points, all of this kind of thing. I'm not entirely sure why, but before we go on though, we've got two super chats that we're going to cover, and then we're gonna move on to the next kind of section, because I don't want to. We've got a lot to go through, and I think it's better if we kind of break it up a little bit so we can keep up, rather than. I think we're covering too many topics at once, and I don't want to hammer people. So let's just do these two super chats, all right? Now, this is an interesting one, actually, that be tempted to agree with. But Oliver, thank you so much for the super chat and the question and or comment. I guess more people in India than in Europe eat vegan, as unfortunately a dish without animal in Europe is not perceived as a full meal. Do you agree? I would correct that, and I would say it's actually more. I would say more people in India eat vegetarian, absolutely, than in Europe. But vegan, I don't know if the numbers are in on that. But vegetarian, absolutely. And I would agree that with the second part, that absolutely in Europe and also in most Western countries, the idea of a meal without meat is unthinkable for most people. But in India, that's not quite the case for a good majority of the population. That they can do without meat. It's not like they need it, right? I mean, there are exceptions, like in the South. I know in the South there's a very big concentration of people that would have that same mentality as in Europe, but am I right in saying that for the majority of the country, that's not the case? Like, it's not a requirement to have meat in a meal for it to be complete, right? In India, I mean.
Um, I'm not sure if it's like true for the majority of the country, but I
Okay.
can say it's relatively like it's more of a truth in India than it would be in Europe if you said most people are okay without meat. But yeah, again, that's a distinction we must draw, right? I'm not sure. In fact, it's probably not true that more people are vegan in India. More people are vegetarian in India,
Yeah.
and some people might think, oh, that's getting close, but no, it's not, right? Because what we're focused on is not having a tortured corpse on your plate, right? Like for the production of animal products, whether it be dairy or for meat, right? Um, uh, there's an innocent individual who is tortured, right? For the meat, right? The tortured corpse ends up on your plate, right? For the dairy, it doesn't, right? But how the hell does that matter, right?
Absolutely.
What we're against is animal suffering, right? It's not animal dead body parts, right?
Yep.
It's animal suffering that we're against. So yeah, I think that's an important distinction that you drew, that that needs to be drawn. Yes.
And I think just to further kind of get into that, whereas in Europe, in Europe there are people, most people I would say, that can't go for, they think a meal is not complete without meat on the table, but they could easily do without dairy. I don't think dairy in the Europe, it's not a core thing that it needs to be in every meal, but in India this is flipped on its head. You know,
Yeah.
meat may not be a necessity for every meal, but dairy absolutely is for most people. Obviously, it's not a necessity. Sorry, it's that's the wrong word to use. But they feel it is a necessity. That's better. The better way to describe it. They feel that the meal is incomplete without ghee, which is a dairy product, without milk in tea, for example. That it's almost unthinkable for somebody in from I'm kind of blanket statement in here, like assuming that everybody in India is like this. I'm not trying not to do that, but from my impression, that's one of the key issues of animal rights activism in India, is that most, if not almost all people that drink tea can't imagine it without dairy milk, and they drink tea a lot. And the same with meals, like a lot of the dishes, if not practically all of the dishes, they want to have ghee in the dish, or it's not complete without ghee, right? This is what I'm being told by my friends and activists in India. Do you agree with that?
I think it's as true as that most people in Europe think meat is a necessary. They think it is a necessary
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
So again, it's not that I don't know, because I've not done the research on this, if most people think dairy is absolutely necessary. Just because I'm Indian doesn't give me any qualifications on that subject.
yeah,
But lived experience is not sufficient.
sure.
So, but yeah, I do think that dairy is considered more important in India than what I understand is like thought of in Europe or the Americas, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm
definitely.
not sure if it applies to most all people or even most
Sure.
people, but it's more true in India than it is in Europe.
Got
That's
it.
how I would put it.
Yeah, from my experience of when I lived there for some time, worked there for some time, I would tend to agree. I mean, to be fair, like when I was there, I had a concentrated experience, because whereas you living there and your whole life, you'll have discussed all different topics of all different things. For me, because I was there specifically as a vegan, working with animal rights activists and working on animal rights, literally I'd say 99% of conversations that I had with anyone, whether they were in the public or with people that I knew, would be about veganism. So I had this concentrated kind of experience of what are the main excuses, and the main excuses out of my entire time were the tea and the ghee. That's actually, it's a rhyme, actually. I think we could probably use that to teach people about the main things to look out for in India as an activist. The ghee and the tea, they're the things that you're gonna get in every conversation. Most people would be happy to say, yeah, well, meat is not necessary. I agree. Great. But tea and milk and the ghee, that's it. That has to be done. In almost every conversation, that's how it went. So it's tough. But we got another super chat from Melly again. Thank you so much again, Melly. Really appreciate you getting involved here. And also, just as a quick note, for the people that gave super chats in Friday's live stream, thank you so much for that. And I know I didn't put them up on the screen, but that was a different type of live stream. But I saw them. I really appreciate them. And I know that Annie thanked you as well. And I just want to say thank you also. But Aditya, would you like to share with us how you became vegan? And was it overnight or baby steps?
And that's interesting because it cannot be summarized as either of those. By the way, thank you first. How I became vegan, right? It's interesting. I went vegetarian first. Okay, complete honesty there. I went vegetarian in 2014, right? So that's 6 years ago at this point. 7 years ago. It's 2021. Can't believe it. I went vegetarian in 2014 when I was going somewhere on my cycle, right? And then I just saw this baby goat being slaughtered, and I thought wait, let me just look at that. And I saw this baby goat being slaughtered, and that's just I had never seen it before, right? I've seen it from a distance. I'd never seen it up close, right? And I saw the baby goat. It's trying to get away. It can't. The butcher is holding it. What I also saw, and this was the real eye opener. I saw another baby goat who was trying to hide away, right? That baby goat knew that this is going to happen to me next. Yeah. And I'm like, my God, that's exactly how I would behave if I were in that situation. Right. So that day I decided that was February 2014. And I decided, no, I'm not having meat or fish or eggs again. Oh, by the way, in India, vegetarian means no eggs. Right. Yep. So I'm not having any of these things again. I kept consuming dairy, but it's not like I'm taking baby steps. Why was I still consuming dairy? It's not like I had some habit with milk that I just had to continue. I just didn't know about it. What it takes for dairy to be produced, it's horrifying, right? Perhaps it's even more horrifying, and I think it is. It's fairly straightforward. That dairy is more cruel, right? And I didn't know about it, right? It's not obvious, in the same way that meat is, right? So it took me some time. I think it was 2 years. It was indeed 2 years later, in May of 2016. I saw these what happens with dairy. Right? I saw a video, and then whoa, right? I'm not eating meat, but if I'm still contributing to this, then I'm still contributing to unnecessary suffering. And then the day I saw that, right, so I went vegan. So it cannot be summarized as either overnight. I didn't go from eating meat to being vegan, but it's not accurate to say baby steps, because there was no baby step. There was this one step, and there was the second step. So yeah.
I think it can be summarized as overnight, though, because it's when you found out you did something. That is an overnight change. You found out, you stopped. So I guess not overnight in the sense that people imagine it's just everything to nothing kind of thing in terms of animal products, but in terms of learning to changing, that was an overnight process. I think that's really important to define.
The moment the video ended, I decided, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate answering those questions. Look, we've got quite a lot to go through, so let's jump back into the let's say the drama, or the main topic here, and then we obviously want to make time for a Q&A as well. So let's see if we can get through some of this a little bit quicker. So we can, so we can keep you on for a Q&A. I know you'll have to shoot off, I suppose, in the next kind of 40 minutes, but I hope we can get everything in. So let's talk about this inbox you received, because this wasn't the end of it, by the way. It wasn't just one example of somebody launching these accusations against you. We actually have an inbox that you sent me, some messages that someone sent you to privately. So you blocked out the face, which is obviously appreciated, as it's a private message. Now, this person claimed the way you talk about veganism is completely unnecessary and creates more problems than it solves. You really don't need to compare humans to animals. I think you need to educate yourself on the history of racism and oppression. I'll help you out with finding reliable sources if you want me to. Just ask. Now, it's almost like it's a repeat of the comments earlier, isn't it? Now, you've already said you.
I think earlier. Yeah, this was earlier than those comments, right?
Okay, really? Okay.
So I received the first. First, there was this one comment, and that's in the screenshot that in the story she replies to. Someone said, "I don't think you can compare eating meat to throwing gays off roofs." It's again about that reason, right?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I had responded to that by saying that the phraseology of these things matter. When you say eating meat, you trivialize the suffering of non-human animals, and of course, then that it seems like, how could this be comparable? But you have to put it as it really is, right?
Yeah.
When you put it as really is, what is it, right? It's the imposition of extraordinary unnecessary suffering onto individuals who have the same willingness to avoid suffering as you and I, right?
Exactly.
Is that compared the imposition of unnecessary suffering, the imprisonment in some of the worst conditions on earth to the point of being driven insane? Some non-human animals go insane in captivity, in factory farms and all those places, right? The enslavement, right? Just being tortured and ultimately put to death, right? Now, is that comparable when you put it in that way? I suggest that it is, right?
Yeah.
When you put it as eating meat, of course it's going to not seem like it's comparable. So that's what she's replying.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they make it like it's an arbitrary personal choice. This is the problem, and then of course it seems like it's not comparable when you put it like that. It's part of a. It's clever, it's clever, and they know they're doing it. They're not stupid. They understand that they're playing it down. But you went off actually here. I've read this, but you went off. You lost it here, and it's like, right, you know what? I think I remember you actually asked me, like, should I say this? And then you said, screw it, I'm going to say it. Yeah. But
if you think I should share it publicly,
that was it.
Yeah.
So you're a white girl living in America. You want to lecture me on racism, and which we've been over. It's ridiculous. It's in the kind of post you share and how. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think that part is important, right? I think the validity of an argument doesn't depend on who makes it.
Yeah.
Rather, it depends on the merits of the arguments. So that's the kind of philosophy that I espouse. But given that this person clearly seems like I've seen her post, right? It's not some random person messaging me. I've seen her post.
Yeah.
I know that she certainly does think that the validity of an argument depends on who makes it, right? And she says, I'm just reading out the message at this point. I've seen the kind of post you share. I said to that person, right? She says, empower POC voices. If a POC says something is racist, then it's racist, which is, by the way, the most stupid thing I've ever heard, and so on. All of that goes down the drain when the POC, right, inverted commas, doesn't agree with your woke dogma, doesn't it? Right. So yeah.
And she's a vegan, right? This is a vegan.
Yeah, this is a vegan.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said that, and then you followed up with here's a fun bit of trivia for you. Then you explained what you've already explained to us.
About the colonization, about the northeastern states, and about then again.
Exactly. And then you gave her this sassy comment here. You want to lecture me on racism and oppression, white girl. I loved that, by the way. I'm sorry. I know it's like you're playing her own game, which is why I loved it. If you actually meant that, I would have been like, oh no, that's not cool. But because you were playing her own game, I really appreciated that
I would never say to anyone who's being polite to me and just coming up and talking like a normal person, I wouldn't say like, oh, you're a white girl or you're this kind of person or that kind of. I would never say that. But this person clearly does, right? So again, as you said, I'm playing her own game. I wouldn't ever tell someone that their opinion is invalid because they're a white girl. That's just not the kind of person I am.
No. But in this case, it is important that because she's trying to, as we said, educate you. It's like you're not in a position. Your lived experience is not the whole point here, but at the same time, she's not asked you any questions about you. So how can she make an assumption that you need to be lectured without even giving you a second to explain it? She could, the right way this could have gone, and none of this would have need to have happened, is she'd have said to you, hey, could I ask, what is your knowledge of an experience of oppression and racism, just so I understand where you're coming from before I launch my attack on you? And then you could have said, well, here's my situation. And then she would have been like, oh, okay, so you do know what you're talking about. So maybe I need to adjust my view rather than making you adjust yours. This is how it should have gone. But instead, she took her, she thought she knew what she was talking about. And we'll get into why that is, but yeah, she thought she knew what she was talking about, and you put her in a place, basically. And and it was needed, it was absolutely necessary. But then what I want to get into, I guess we can move on to this actually, because it's important. We've talked about what has happened and why it's stupid, which is what we've been over just now, basically. It's stupid because of who you are and your experience and your knowledge and your research. And you're not an idiot. You know your history. You know what you're talking about. But they're assuming you are an idiot. They're assuming that you don't know what the fuck you're doing or what the fuck you're talking about, and that you're just going out there blindly offending people without any knowledge of racism, oppression, of indigenous people. That it's all, you're just so ignorant, right? This is what they're assuming. How have we got to a point let's focus on the vegan community first of all. How have we got to a point where people feel they have the right to assume what somebody else knows or doesn't know, and to lecture and educate them on what they think they do or don't know? What do you think has led them to the point? And especially, it's someone like me, we can see, we know why it's got to that point, because straight white men are the enemy. But even to you, right? How has it got to the point where they feel like not only are they attacking straight white men, but they're going to attack somebody who's neither of those things? Like, okay, I don't know if you're straight or not, but you're definitely not a white man. So, how has it got to the point where now they've extended those attacks to what do you think? Like, where is it coming from?
I honestly couldn't tell you, right? But I think all of this is stupid. But I haven't read any literature significantly on human psychology and psychiatry. My answer to that is just, I don't know. I think it's an unfortunate situation. I think I wish we weren't in this situation, but I honestly don't know. And as far as topics where I don't know, I just
That's
say
all
I don't.
right. Yeah, I understand. I think I mean, I don't know. I've got a theory we can try and flesh out a little bit. Maybe is that I think personally, I think it's a reflection of what's going on in the wider society. I think with the rise of cancel culture and people getting attacked for opinions the wrong opinion, let's say, sorry, wrong opinion. If you, depending on the recent dogma, like what is the most the rules of what we're involved in the society, the rules change on an hourly basis, right? What you can say now, you probably can't say next week, or even in an hour, it becomes wrong because some blogger made a blog about how this word is offensive. So now you saying that word gets you cancelled. And this is kind of where we've got to. And then we've created these people who are the police of that, right? They follow these bloggers, they follow these accounts and I'm going to show you an example of one of these accounts to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, because they exist. And this is one I've had on the channel before actually, but we're going to revisit. It popped up earlier. So this is an account as an example. I wouldn't say they're exactly they're not an evil account. I don't think this person's evil. I don't think this person's even a bad person. But this is the kind of post that unfortunately I think is causing a lot of these issues and these kind of people who feel entitled to go and correct or lecture other people. So it's talking about making veganism intersectional, and some good information here actually. I actually quite like this. As with the other posts this person makes, I find a lot of it's very interesting and it's good to learn. This is also good to learn. This is starting to get to the point where I would start to disagree. Presenting human and animal rights as competing interests is not only unproductive. Well, I agree with that. But then we should highlight the interconnectedness of these struggles and work towards dismantling all systems of oppression. we start to get into a world where it's like, okay, it's kind of unicorn land. You can't possibly imagine doing it all at the same time and succeeding, right? There needs to be focuses, and that's not to say that you should engage in the oppression of others whilst doing your work. You should absolutely not. But to try to undo it all in one, I find to be a little bit, unfeasible. Now it goes on from here, and this is where it starts to get a little bit. It pushes the boat out a bit, in my opinion. And I've only seen this once before, but I'm looking at it again now, obviously.
Can I just say something before I forget?
Sure.
Can you just move back to that last slide?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, I'll do it. Go ahead.
She says and work towards dismantling all systems of oppression. That's okay, right? We have to it is certainly the goal that there would be no oppression, right? That's the goal that we all have to be working about. But to bring into the vegan movement, right, sort of the animal rights movement, that you should also care about human beings, and indeed we should care about human beings. But to bring that into the animal rights movement seems to me to be a bit like I'll use my own example because otherwise people are going to call me racist. So it's a bit like if 150 years ago, right? I certainly know these people existed. There was this anti-colonialist British people, right? They were like, oh, what's going on is wrong, right? And they would be like, this is horrible. It shouldn't happen. And someone says there, oh, but you also have to end the oppression of white people in Britain. The Indians are suffering, all right, but why do you care about Indians more than you care about white British people? Is that you're anti-British? I mean, no, there's something going on there that we need to address. Like in that situation, it's millions and millions of Indians, hundreds of millions of Indians suffering in India as a consequence of British rule, or as we call it here, British Raj. So there was that. Did the connection get cut off?
Yeah, the connection got cut off, right? But I think the connection was cut off for a second. But I guess the point is that it's not that you don't care about British people that were suffering. It's just that the priority for you, and you wouldn't actually contribute to that suffering, but that's not the priority for you currently. The priority for you is the resulting consequences of the British rule. That's what you want to focus on in that scenario, right?
Can do just one kind of activism, right? Mm-hmm. It was the Nobel laureate Donna Strickland, who is the Nobel laureate in physics a few years ago. There's this quote from her. Did I mention it? Okay, she's the Nobel laureate in physics. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but there's this quote from her. It's that the world works best when we all do what we're good at, right? So if you, for example, you're really good at animal rights activism, why on earth would you be like you know the information, you've done the research. Mm-hmm. If you're doing animal rights activism, you're contributing far more to the reduction of oppression and suffering than you would be like if you were doing some other kind of activism. And maybe it even be like anti-imperialist activism. Like if you suddenly move there, you wouldn't be able to contribute as much, right? So we should all do what we're good at. I think that's a fair point to make.
And as long as you're not trying to, as long as you're not oppressing anybody in the process, it's like if you're standing for animal rights, then the caveat or the then it's a necessity that you don't oppress others that are not involved within animal rights. So don't oppress humans if you're standing for non-humans. That's an obvious. And flipping it over as well. If you're standing for human rights, then okay, fine. You don't want to talk for the animals, the non-humans. That's totally cool. Just don't oppress them. That's all it's asked. Okay, so that's where I kind of would disagree with here. But now where it kind of tends to go off the rails a little bit for me, and we move over here. If you went vegan because you're an advocate for animal rights, ask yourself what systems have enabled humans to treat animals as disposable commodities. A good place to start is researching the ways in which white supremacy, colonialism, capitalism, and human supremacy are deeply connected. So it starts to move the conversation immediately over to humans, right? And over to human rights. We're talking about white supremacy. We're talking about colonialism. And it's talking about environmentalism here as well. And it talks about slaughterhouse workers and remember the slaughterhouse workers and remember the people, talking about people growing, picking plant foods, which it's all important stuff. All right, it is. But it's kind of, it moves the conversation away from, in my opinion, from animal rights and starts to move it onto a more human-centric approach, which which a lot of people love. This is the point. It's not controversial to move from animal rights to human rights. It's not controversial at all. Actually, the majority would prefer that. The majority of people are not vegans. The majority of vegans are not vegans who are like, animal focused vegans. Actually, I would say the vast majority of vegans, they go vegan for the animals, but if they can find a way to make it about humans, they will, because it's natural. We can't help it. We're selfish. We can only see things through human eyes. It takes a lot of willpower and a lot of effort to actually put yourself in the position of a non-human. And a lot of people, and vegans and non-vegans, are just unwilling to do that. So when these posts come up, although I believe they're well-intentioned, what they end up doing is they pit the vegans for the animals, like myself, for example, against the vegans who focus on human issues. Like, for example, talking about holding space for businesses, accounts, and organizations that are run by BIPOC vegans. This is apparently a part of veganism now. And it's not, as like I said, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad piece of advice. Don't get me wrong. If you want to do that, go ahead and do that. But it should never be a part of what it means to be a vegan. It shouldn't. You're taking something that is the animals. It's the only thing they have, and you're starting to force people to make it about humans. You're taking all the attention away. And I know people get really upset when you say this, and they say it doesn't take the attention away. It doesn't. It does. It actually does. It's so difficult to get people to focus on non-humans. And when you post things like this, you make it even harder, because then they start talking about humans again. It's so hard to get people to really see things through the eyes of the animals. So, I think this kind of post, sorry, just to summarize anyway, I don't particularly have anything against this individual, actually, in this sense. I don't think this post is necessarily bad, but I think people read it in a bad way. They read it and they become kind of radicalized in favor of humans. And then they go against somebody like you who makes a post that they deem to be anti-human, and they've seen these kind of viral posts and they feel like they need to correct you. And it's this kind of post that creates that I need to correct this person attitude. That's what I believe anyway. That's my theory behind where this is coming from.
Before we move on, I had something like something that I wanted to say, and I fear the time will run out. So let me just say that it's related here. It's about human, non-human comparisons, right? So again, we've already addressed this, right? People take a lot of offense at humans and non-humans being compared, right? And people take a lot of offense at people like Gary Yourofsky comparing the exploitation of animals to the Jewish Holocaust, right?
Yeah.
He's Jewish himself. Right, people come at him with accusations of anti-Semitism, and they're like, "You can't do that, right? Why? Because the Jewish people don't want you to do it, right?" But then there are these, there are Jewish people, right, who make these comparisons themselves. Like Gary Yourofsky is certainly one. There are the actual Holocaust survivors, right? Actual Holocaust survivors who. Like, to just read this one, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, but it's Georges Metanomsky, right?
Okay.
He says, like, when I go to a restaurant and see people devouring meat, I feel sick. I see a Holocaust on their plates, right?
Yep.
People take a lot of offense at that, right? So, and they say, like, although it's technically a Holocaust, like the definition of a Holocaust is slaughter on a mass scale. I think there's another word there, but it's the definition for slaughter on a mass scale. So although it's technically a Holocaust, you can't compare them. How dare you compare them? How dare you compare Jewish people to non-human animals? You're playing into white supremacist narratives, right? But Gary Yourofsky is not, though, right? And anyone who does make these comparisons, whether or not they're Jewish, they're not playing into white supremacist narratives necessarily, right? There might be some, but just making that comparison is not like anti-Semitic, right?
Yeah.
And people say like the Holocaust just refers to that particular incident that happened during World War II, during the Third Reich. So yeah, don't use that term, right? But I have this book which I used as part of the research for this live stream, right? It's called An Era of Darkness. The British Empire in India. It's written by MP Dr. Shashi Tharoor, that's Member of Parliament, right? And within it, he refers to what the British did in India, and I don't know if my camera will pick it up. It's right
Yeah.
there. He refers to it as this. He
Go on,
refers
read
to
it
what the
out.
British.
We can't really see, but yeah, it's okay.
It's on page number 176. If anyone is interested,
Okay.
he refers to what the British did in India as the British colonial holocaust. And I put up a few polls asking people on my various accounts. If someone has put it, I have a lot of accounts. I asked them, is this offensive to you that MP Dr. Shashi Tharoor called what happened in India a holocaust? Most people are not offended. More than 90% of people across global veganism and across on cosmic rationalists don't think it's offensive,
Yeah.
right? And as they shouldn't, right? Right? Why should that offend you? Why, like imagine someone comes up to you and say, like, how dare you call that a holocaust, right? How dare you compare Jews to Indians, right? If killing Indians is wrong, right? I personally am a non-Indian killer, but you can't compare Jews to Indians. That's white supremacist. It's not, right? It's not.
Yeah.
And if you think it's white supremacist to compare Jewish people to Indian people, there's no anti-Semitism at play there, right? That's your own racism at play there, right? It is your own racism which like doesn't allow you to like take normally a comparison between Jewish people and Indian people, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, if you're offended by human and non-human suffering, whether it be from the Holocaust, whether it be like the colonization of India, which we've discussed, was actually a horrible thing, right? A really horrible thing, more horrible than people realize. If you're offended by these things, right, that is not racism or anti-Semitism on the part of the person who is making these comparisons. It is speciesism on your own part, right? So yeah, that's I think I just wanted to make that point. I think it's an important point.
Definitely, definitely, and these individuals, like the one I just mentioned, that I had the screen up for, and individuals actually similar accounts to that, which there are many of them. They make the claims that go directly against what you've just said. You know, they say that it's you can't make these comparisons. You shouldn't make these comparisons. You are a white supremacist if you make those comparisons. You are a racist if you make those comparisons. You're unhelpful. You're damaging. Your activism is not intersectional if you make those comparisons. And the goal is intersectionality. The goal is this, you know, it's a unicorn basically that they want to create where we're able to solve every fucking problem in the world with one sentence, you know, one post that can fix everything. It's like Lord of the Rings, you know, one ring to rule them all, like one post to solve all oppression. And you know, it's okay to think like that. I don't hate these people. I don't hate them at all. I just think that it's good intentions, but it's not well executed. But the problem I see is not necessarily with these individuals themselves. I don't know why. Maybe they have good intentions and that's the reason they do it. Maybe they do it because they see that it gives their account a big boost. I don't know why exactly they take this road that they take.
I just remembered something that I had read. They
Okay.
consider themselves to be the voice of the voiceless,
Wait, sorry,
right?
say again.
They consider themselves to be the voice of the voiceless,
Who does,
right?
sorry?
Like these people who say these things like you're not supposed to make those comparisons. They say like you're not supposed to make these Holocaust comparisons,
Yeah.
like because Jewish people don't like it. But even though there are Jewish people and the actual Holocaust survivors who make those comparisons themselves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so they consider themselves to be the voice of the voiceless. As Arundhati Roy wrote, there really is no such thing as the voiceless, right? There is
Of
only
course.
there are only the preferably unheard and the deliberately silenced, right? And like someone in the comments might go, "Oh, what about the animals? You're talking about non-human animals, and you're talking there are no voiceless individuals. Non-human animals too are not voiceless individuals. They have
Yep.
a voice. They scream. They try to run away. They have
Yep.
a voice,
They
right?
have no
And
political voice. That's the statement. That's what it means basically.
they like they're going unheard, right? And the point of what I do, right, is not to speak up on behalf of the animals. Right? I'm saying listen to those voices, right? And that should be the point of all kinds of activism. You don't get to be the voice of the voiceless, right? What you get to do, right, is get to direct the attention towards those voices that are being oppressed. And so when these people are doing, they're not only deliberately silencing the voice of the non-human animals, they're also they're also deliberately silencing these marginalized groups that they claim to care about so much, right? So there's
Yeah.
that. Oh, by the way, before I forget, and before someone accuses me of making false analogies again, it's like a circular game. But someone might say, oh, you can't say you can't say like I gave that example of right, someone being offended at Jewish people and Indian people being compared. You can't
Yeah.
say that's equivalent to no, Jewish people being compared to non-human animals, right? Because the Nazis compared Jewish people to non-human animals, and that's the basis on which they carried out the Holocaust. That's true, right? And the fact that the Nazis did that, right, is speciesist, right? They first of all, it's anti-Semitic, right? But it's also speciesist. They thought of non-human animals as far less than themselves, and then they equated Jewish people to those non-human animals. That is speciesist and anti-Semitic, right? You have to grow out of the anti-Semitism part, but you also have to grow out of the speciesist part. Because if you're going to accuse people like me of saying, you're still praying the white supremacist, you're still holding on to the white supremacist ideology. No, I'm not. It is who is doing that, right? So yeah, and imagine if the Nazis had done that, right? If the Nazis had said, yeah, these Jewish people, these are actually Indians. They're like Indians, right? If the Nazis had said that, suppose,
Yeah.
right? Would that now offend you if someone made a comparison between Jewish people and Indian people? They would say, oh, like Jewish people were compared to Indians, therefore you shouldn't compare Jewish people to Indians. Where that's flawed reasoning, I'd say.
I think, yeah,
And
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's what you're going through here is kind of like you're ticking off the check boxes of the kind of typical things that these individuals tend to say, and we're grouping into these individuals together, but it does the it seems to be like they seem to be copies of similar people saying similar things, and they kind of belong to a group of similar people with similar mindsets, and when you meet them, when you interact with these people, the best way to explain it is it's kind of like interacting with somebody who they don't, I'm being offensive here, but look, this is actually meant to be offensive. They don't really have their own opinions. This is the kind of person, and what you realize is, right, when you actually push on what they're saying and get into it, they block you, right? That person that's the result of those messages, by the way, those inboxes, right? The person blocked you, didn't they? The one what
yeah,
you said,
and
yeah.
also the person who said they'd listen to Indigenous people. These
So
people blocked me.
so two people tried to reach out to you, or no, sorry, tried to educate you, and you said, I don't need educating because of here's my back, here's who I am, here's my experience, here's my life, and they both blocked
Here's my
you.
research.
Here's my research.
Here's
They
my
both
research.
blocked you, right? They both blocked you. And this is a perfect example of what I've just said. They don't have their own opinions. They're repeating someone else's opinions that they've not properly thought through. And once it's challenged, they can't, they realize, oh shit, and they block you because you've proven them wrong, and you've shown them that you're not going to fit into their neat little box, so you get blocked. And it's happening so often, and I think the posts like the one I just showed, and similar posts and similar accounts, although they go out there with good intention, they're creating these people, because these people that they create, they don't think rationally, they don't think critically, they just get upset because the words racism and colonialism are around, and those are buzzwords these days, and they go out and try and attack people. And they've not, they come for me clearly because of what I look like, but they've come in for you as well. And I say that as a passing thing because the reason they come for me, we've been through that in a lot of detail. It's not about me today, it's about why they're coming for you, actually, which is why I'm just kind of bypassing that. But look, I've kept you on for 2 hours now. So look, I can give you two choices here. Either we go straight into a Q&A and we move to that direction, or we continue on for a bit longer if you want to continue on for a bit longer before the Q&A. I'll leave that up to you.
I think we should do the Q&A. And
Okay.
just for that, we keep referring to this group as they. I think there's a good word for it. I
Go
think we
ahead.
can call them the cult of wokeness. So yeah,
Brave. The cult of
they,
wokeness.
they behave like a cult, right? And they don't have their own opinions. There are these blasphemies that you are not to commit, right? and they have this scripture which cannot be which cannot be contradicted. And if you contradict it, right, you've committed blasphemy. You'll get in relation, that's like you're being expelled, or you're being there are different punishments, right? They, in this one, in the cult of wokeness, they cancel you, right? So it's very much like a cult,
Yeah.
and but it's not enough to just call it a cult. It's the cult of wokeness. I think that's fair enough.
I'd say, yeah, I have to agree. I mean, it is a, for all the reasons you've said it, it fits the description of a cult. The blasphemy, and the scriptures that we had that they have to adhere to. This is where I said it earlier. The interesting part about that is that it's always changing, and
Yeah.
they're always on top of it and change. And as it changes, it's not like the Bible, or like a real cult where or a religious cult, let's say, where they have a solid thing that has been there for years and years and years, and that's the thing they all believe in. This is something that it's always changing, so it becomes it's such a special kind of cult. It's one that you can't really, it's hard to keep up with, the latest cult belief when it comes to this,
I don't keep up with Christianity's rules, which have been there for ages and ages. Like, if something is a blasphemy, I don't care. I'm not going to care about you either. There are 2 billion people there. What things you like? Why do you think you will scare me? I'm not scared of you.
Yeah,
So,
that's I like that. I like that. So let's open up for the Q&A. So people, you have some questions already, actually, but yeah, to ask questions now, please do use the Google Doc that is pinned in the top comment. It's pinned in the comment at the top of the live. It's also pinned underneath the video. So please click that link and send your questions right now. If you have questions, it's much easier for us to keep up with if you do it that way. We do have a few already, so we'll kick off with the questions now. And also, one last point. We talked about white supremacy. We've talked about racism. We've talked about colonialism. We've talked about the Nazis and the Holocaust. So look, this video is almost certainly going to be demonetized. So if you have enjoyed this, if you are enjoying this currently, if you want to ask a question and show everybody how awesome you are at the same time, then please use the super chat, because you get your comment on the screen, your name up on the screen. Everybody sees how awesome you are, which that's just great, right? Get that dopamine hit. But also, you contribute to the stream and you really help me out. So please do consider doing that. And of course, smash the like button before you leave, and also subscribe. All of those good things. So let's have a look at the first question. I can't put it up on the screen because it's part of a Google Doc, but I can read it out. So we've got a question from Jack, the vegan activist, who's asking, how long have you been vegan? I think you already answered this, right? But you said, go on, you remind me, what was your answer? How long have you been vegan?
all right, before we do that, I'd like to also tell people that even I have a YouTube channel. So yeah, you might want to check that out. It's linked in David's description of this video. Right?
Yeah, dude, we were gonna plug that at the end, man. That was that. Don't worry, you weren't gonna leave before we plugged your channel and your social media, man. Totally, that was gonna be post Q&A, but yeah, we can do it now if you want. Go ahead.
Sure, it's there. So yeah, the question was, how long have I been vegan? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I've been vegan since May 2016, 26th May 2016.
Awesome. For me, if the question's for me as well, it's been, I don't have an exact date because it was kind of I don't know, it wasn't a big decision for me. I was born vegetarian, so it wasn't like a huge deal for me at that point. But it was around 10 or 11 years ago, 11 years, going on 12, I think now, actually, quite a while ago. And the next question. So, we've kind of touched on this, but it's a good question. We'll go for it. Lawrence Anton is asking, thoughts on white veganism. Is it real? If so, to what extent is it an issue that is holding back progress in the animal rights movement? So we touched on the idea that these kind of ideas within this concept of white veganism, but we never actually labeled it as white veganism, and I never actually defined it. Do you know what white veganism is being defined as, Aditya?
I don't think there's even a coherent definition to these things. Like, I couldn't possibly decipher from the term, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what it is, But
Yeah.
I would like to say, like,
Let me define it. How about this? Let me define it for people that have never heard of it before. So this
yeah,
concept is that white veganism is this concept that apparently white people kind of gatekeep veganism, as in they make it that it's a white thing, and they reject people of color. They take people, sorry, ethnic minorities. They take the meals and recipes and vegan food from other countries, and they turn it into a white thing, a Western thing. Like for example, they turned quinoa into a Western thing, or hummus, and they don't respect yeah.
okay.
I'm just saying, huh? Sorry?
It's
Quinoa,
done what?
quinoa. For example, they other countries suffer at the hands of white vegans who take their meals and use their culture to promote veganism, whilst ignoring them completely and not acknowledging that they are the originators. Originators, is that a word? I don't know. They were the origins of those foods. Basically, they were the original people eating those foods. And basically, it's like the idea that veganism, in this sense, just rejects everybody who isn't white, and makes it all about being thin and white and healthy, and all about fitness, and it's all in one. Basically, it's everything that you would see that is kind of shit about veganism, like when people promote it as a health movement, or when people make out that like it's all these expensive ingredients, and they tell you that it's easy and cheap without actually teaching you how it is easy and cheap. All of those things that are bad about vegans, they claim that's white veganism. That's basically it. That's
Okay,
the
I
definition of
can
it.
understand it better now. The thing is that you have to draw a distinction between people and ideologies, right?
Hmm.
What individual people do is their problem, really. Like, for example, you have someone who, let's say, let's think of some kind of activism, who is like who fights against anti-Muslim bigotry, right? That's a good thing.
Hmm.
Um, but then they are like they're against some other kind of group, right? Let's say they're against atheists.
Hmm.
Does that mean that fighting anti-Muslim bigotry is now some kind of has a problem of anti-atheists? No, no. So like if that's the reasoning, right, about white veganism, I think it's a confusion about between like it's a failure to draw the distinction between human like people and ideologies. There might be problem with individual vegans, right? But the problem is not with veganism, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to say there.
Yeah, I would say that there is the ideology behind these bad things, like painting veganism as some kind of skinny health thing, or actually, I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking the foods of other cultures and eating them and celebrating them without respecting the other culture. As long as you're not disrespecting the other culture, it doesn't matter. Like if I want to make a Jamaican style burger and sell it, I don't need to explain to people the history of Jamaican food. Do you know what I mean? That's not offensive to take inspiration and make food. That's not a problem. But I do accept that there are some issues with certain vegans and the way they talk about veganism, for sure. But to label it as white veganism is just fucking disgrace. It's like if I took something negative and about veganism and labeled it as, I don't know, Indian veganism, it's not acceptable to do that. There might be, and it's not even like this kind of attitude does tend to be more prevalent around vegans who happen to be white, but that doesn't make it something that should be associated with skin color. For example, let's put an example. If in India, although most of the Indian vegan community, let's imagine they have the ideology that promoting vegetarianism first, is the ideology of Indian vegans. Let's just imagine, this is not true, but let's imagine that's what most Indian vegans do. It's something that's associated with Indian vegans, that a lot of Indian vegans want to promote vegetarianism before veganism. Then you wouldn't label that as Indian veganism,
Right.
because it's not a good thing. It is a negative thing, right? But you wouldn't say,
Mhm.
"Oh, you're acting like an Indian vegan right now, talking about vegetarianism." It's so fucked up. It's so horrible to use that as like a slur, like, "Oh, white veganism, you should reject it. Indian veganism, you should reject it." No, what? It doesn't. The ideology needs a different name, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
These are problems of individual people.
Exactly.
As I said, it's not it's not a thing. It's not an ideology. You shouldn't project onto, especially an anti-oppression movement, the
Yeah.
problems you see in individual people. Right? That's what I.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for that. Good answer. So next we have another question. Uh, this is an interesting one. What is the state? This is sorry. This is who asked it. It's Lawrence again, actually. So we'll go for it. What is the state of the animal rights movement in India, and what are the key differences, if any, between the movement in India and in Western countries like the US and the UK?
I'm not sure how to answer that. If you're asking about the state of veganism,
The
that's a really
differences, yeah.
broad question. That's a really broad question. I certainly can tell you that, like maybe the word veganism is more known in the West, right?
Mm,
But apart from that, I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge to comment. Like I haven't researched it, right? And just the
sure.
fact that I'm Indian doesn't give me a qualification on that. That's
Yeah.
all I can tell you is that people like understand vegan, like the concept of veganism better in the West, right? Like if I'm talking to someone who's from the West, I don't have to explain what veganism is. But here, if I say like I say I don't eat meat and fish and eggs and dairy, oh, you're vegetarian. I'm like, no,
Hmm.
I'm vegan. So I think that's all I can say there. But
Sure. From my lived experience anyway, at least, or I guess I don't know if yeah, it's lived experience, but it is also kind of research because I was interviewing people and doing talks and all these things, and I've done both in the West and in India. There are big differences, yeah, big differences, and one of them is what you've just said about people not understanding or being just knowledgeable on what a vegan is, which is fine. That's actually a good thing when someone's like, oh, what is that? And then you have the opportunity to teach somebody for the first time what is veganism. I actually prefer that. They don't know what it means because then they don't have any hang-ups. They don't have anything against it, and you can be the first person to give the first impression of what a vegan is. I loved that in India. I got so many chances to do that, and I really, really appreciated it. But I think the biggest difference in the movement itself, I would say, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. All right, this is purely anecdotal. I felt like the in India, vegans have a lot more hoops to jump through and a lot more things that would hold them back in comparison to Europe and the West. I feel like in the West there are more people who are it's the culture of the West and the religions of the West are far less stringent in comparison to India. In India, quite a lot of daily life, in my experience, was dominated by strong, extremely strong cultural beliefs and extremely strong religious beliefs, and that alone makes promoting animal rights and veganism that much more difficult in comparison to countries like England, where your religion's almost an afterthought, right? That to argue with somebody or to debate somebody when they're bringing in religious scriptures, it's so difficult to get through to a rational mind when it's clouded with religion, which I truly believe happens quite a lot with religious people. Tell me I'm offensive, but I really do believe that that's how it goes. So in India, I found that case came up quite a lot, and that was the main struggle that most Indian activists I spoke to were having, is coming up against people that bring up these religious and mythical arguments based on myths and based on legends of India, and religious legends and stuff. And it's just so difficult. And I have so much respect for Indian activists, especially for that reason, because God, that is so hard to argue, to debate and argue with somebody who believes that Krishna was alive and drank milk from cows. And how do you even debate that? How can it takes a long time, and it takes a very careful and patient time to get through to somebody who's really truly standing by and believing that. And I've got a lot of respect for people in India doing that work. Yeah.
about that one example at the end
Sure.
about Krishna,
Yeah.
I think someone like me would again this goes back to the tactics part.
Sure.
Someone like me would simply say that's not true, right? That's not true.
Yeah.
But again, perhaps that appeals to a different kind of person, right? As someone would say, I'd be like, what you're saying is not true at all. and then I'd say a whole bunch of things. But then there's this one response that I heard that I think if someone wants to use later, I think it's a good one. Um, it's from Arvind Kannan. He's called Arvind Animal Activist. He says, like, if someone says to you that Krishna drank milk, if you don't want to say that that's not true, which is something I would recommend, but if you don't want to do that, you say that you can't expect to do things that someone whom you believe was a god was doing, right? Krishna did a lot of things, and it might have been justified for him because you think of him as a god, but you are not a god, right? You are not a deity. So just the fact that they did it doesn't mean that you are also justified to do it. So yeah, so that's a useful response that someone might want to use if they want to. But yeah,
that's good. I appreciate that. Yeah, Arvind is definitely someone to check out. Arvind Animal Activist, for anybody who's wondering who we're talking about. I think it's on YouTube. Really good, really good high quality videos. Question from we've got a few questions left. Do you still have time for these questions?
I think I can do one more.
One more question. Oh, all right. So I'll just take a look and pick the one that's the most useful then, I suppose, for the viewers. Sorry for the ones who aren't going to get those answered. There are a few more, but it would take a while, so I understand. It's getting on for you, isn't it? It's getting a bit late. So one last final question, then let's have it as a good one. All right. How do I start educating myself with the right resources? This is from. Sorry, 1 second. It's hard to actually make me see. I think it's 1 second. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's Jiminy Got No Jams is the person who's answered this question. How do I start educating myself with the right resources all about what has been discussed here in its relation to veganism? Because my knowledge on politics and such terms is really weak. What kind of resources can I look into to educate myself better? So I guess to elaborate on that, the question is, where can they get resources as opposed to understand? Is it I mean, you mean resources about when people are trying to tell you not to talk about certain things and resources to come back at them? I guess, is that what it is? Like, or learning about how, I don't know exactly what the question is getting at there, but let's assume it's that they've said something about veganism and someone's come back to them and said, oh, well, that's racist because you're white and you shouldn't tell people to be vegan if they're from India, for example. Like, where do people find resources to come back and say, well, actually, that's bullshit? I think maybe we'll answer that question. I guess following me or you would help really with ways to come back to that.
I also think that you should just read up on general logic and reasoning, right? So it just helps you point out the flaws in there, right? I guess someone, for example, I gave the example earlier that if someone is saying, like, calling me a white supremacist or an internalized white supremacy, I can simply say, well, where's your justification to that? And okay, someone's at the door, I'll get that and then I'll come right back.
That's okay, man. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, just let me know when you're back, and I'll just have a chat while this is going on. Whoops.
Can you turn off the?
Yes, I'll turn the audio off. Audio's off. Yep. Go ahead. So whilst he's dealing with that, I'll just quickly chat to you guys. Remember, now is the last time you'll get a chance to do a super chat. So I know he said no more questions, but if you want to sneak one more question in, you're going to have to use a super chat, because then he has to stay and answer it. All right. So I'll leave that up to you. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. I know it's been quite informative, I would say. There's even more we wanted to get through. Hopefully we can arrange a second live stream and go through even more information here. I'd like to know what you're thinking of this one. Like, do you think it was good, bad? Did you learn something? If you learned something from this, actually, that would be really cool. If you could let me know in the comments. So tell me what was the main thing you learned here. What was there anything impressive Aditya told you, that anything you thought, wow, I really like that. That was really interesting. That was really useful. Leave it in the comments so that I can see and so Aditya can see, and we can also comment and reply to you, give you more information if you wanted some more information on all that good stuff. I think Aditya's back, actually. Let's see. Hey, you okay?
Yeah, I'm back. So what was I saying? Okay, I was saying that you should read up on logic in general. So I just don't want to be making vague statements here. But you should just read more philosophy. I suppose that I think uh, that's very useful. It's not it like I personally, when I started making this advocacy for veganism, I hadn't quite read up specifically on the vegan. Like I had read a few books and I just started, right. But the way I did it was because I kind of knew like the kind of like the way you should the kind of laws of reasoning and that sort of
Hmm.
stuff, right? So I think that's useful. Just read up on philosophy, and maybe you could also read up on the popular science book that scientists write, right? You don't have to go into the very much a lot of technical stuff, but maybe
Yeah.
read up on books by someone like Carl Sagan, right,
Hmm.
or Richard Dawkins, right? I think they I think their work is really accessible for like thinking about the proper way of thinking, right? Knowing how to think, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I think really useful.
Yeah, I think I would also. I mean, there are a few YouTube. If you want to just check out YouTube channels that are doing this kind of thing, I think Ask Yourself is a pretty good channel for like seeing kind of philosophical debates and seeing how he deals with. It's pretty intense, but you get an idea for how like a formal debate would go. I think also check out Lifting Vegan Logic. He does a lot of parodies, but he also does some debating stuff as well. So you can check out how reasoning, and that kind of stuff. And also, I don't know if the question was about specifically that, or if it was more about how to find out about the history of India, if that's what they were asking. So if that is what they were asking, what would you recommend, as in a book or a video or something they could watch to learn about the British colonialism in India? And
Okay.
maybe
About
that's what they were asking. So
if that's what you're asking, then I recommend reading this book, right, as a place to start, right? In fact, this book, as he writes in the introduction to this book, has started off as a video on YouTube. It's this person, Shashi Tharoor, making the case that Britain does owe India reparations in the Oxford Union. It has millions of views. So if you just search for Shashi Tharoor, that's SHASHI space THAROOR,
mhm.
and then just type in Oxford, right? You'll get that video. So if you're looking to learn about colonialism in India, there's a lot of literature you can read, right? It's really, really research subject. But I think a good place to start really is that case that Shashi Tharoor made in the Oxford Union. And then
Okay,
following that up, you can read this book. And then I suppose you'll be able to find your resources like once you've read these books, right? So I think,
cool.
yeah, and this is a good place to start, is what I want to say.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for all of that information. It's been enlightening, even for me as well. There was a lot of stuff there that I've touched on but never really gone deep into, and I appreciate you doing your research and preparing and really laying out some of this information. It was really really useful. Is there anything else you want? I mean, we can plug. Oh yeah, your social media. So if you go into the description of this video, all of it is just social media is right there. Also in the pinned comment, the social media is right there. So I'm going to stick around for a little bit longer, so don't go anywhere just yet. But Aditya, is there anything you want to say in closing before you shoot off?
Let me just check my notes. Um, yeah,
Okay.
I want to make this final point that I had almost forgotten.
Okay.
I made a video on this subject as well, but that didn't reach as many people. So I'd like to make that point here. People talk about baby steps to veganism, right? And when they do that, it is implied that veganism is the end goal of the like animal rights movement. It's not. Like you might be wondering, what does that mean? Well, veganism is the mandatory minimum. Okay, we all have to be vegan, right? But it shouldn't stop there, right? The goal of the animal rights movement is not merely veganism. It is for the equal consideration for rights for non-human animals. And by that, I don't mean equal rights, right? I mean equal consideration for rights. So let me give you an example of that so that you don't think I'm doing mental gymnastics there. Um, so, for example, someone like me or David doesn't need to be given abortion rights. It makes no sense, right? We can't get pregnant. We don't have to have abortion rights. Um, does that mean we are not given equal rights? Like we are not given equal rights. We're not, but we are given equal consideration for rights, right? And And that's what we need to aim for animals, right? It's not a problem that David and I don't have abortion rights, because why the hell would we need it? But the fact is that human beings are given equal consideration for rights, and non-human animals too, similarly, must be given equal consideration for rights. That's the end goal, right? And so when people talk about baby steps of veganism, that if I'm around, you'll see me kind of getting annoyed. I'll not say anything if they're not talking to me, but it gets me annoyed because veganism is the step to total animal liberation, which is the goal, right? So to talk about baby steps to veganism is like talking for baby steps to the baby steps. I don't think that's the way to go.
No, I totally agree.
Mhm.
Totally agree. It's a yeah, it's a powerful point to end on, man. So again, appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing more of your content as well, and doing this again sometime, and maybe we can do some kind of collaboration as well in the future on an actual, like a feed video rather than a live video. So that would be a cool thing to do as well. All right, man. Cool. I'll let you. I guess you go to bed now, right? It's late there, isn't it? Or are you gonna do some work?
And I'm sleeping late, but I have some other work.
Okay. Nice.
It's
Cool.
it's actually a problem I need to fix. But yeah, I have some other work now. It was great talking to you. I'm glad that we had this discussion.
Sure. Me too, man.
Um,
Me too.
it was a fantastic discussion. I'm glad it went so well. Also, thank you for making this. Like, I've never done this kind of thing before, so it was like really just very easy to do this, right? So, and I thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So yeah, good luck with the work then. We'll keep in touch, and I look forward to doing this again with you.
Yeah, sure.
See you later, man.
Bye-bye.
Oh, sorry, what, you saying something? I
No,
cut you
I
off
was
there.
asking if I have to close it.
No,
So
you can close it. Yeah, I can close it here. No worries.
yeah,
All right.
sure.
See you, man.
Bye.
All right. Just gonna remove him from the studio. Cool. All right then. So that was, I quite enjoyed that. It was enlightening, and I realized actually the questions that have been left here, most of them I can actually answer. So I'm going to get through a few more of your questions. So if you have more questions that I can answer for me, then you can use the form now. And obviously you can use the super chat if you're feeling extra nice, if you're feeling extra special today. I'd really appreciate it. So we have some other questions. Let's take a look. One is from Sharon Spading. So let's check that one. I need to get over to I don't really understand how to use individual. Aha, I've got it. Okay, this is how to use it. So Sharon, where's your question? Sharon? Got it. When people say they only eat meat once or twice a week but are looking to go vegan, how would you help them make that change to full vegan? If they're looking to go vegan, I think that's already, if they say that I'm looking to go vegan, I want to go vegan, I think that's a good thing, because there's already a lot of work has been done already with them that they actually want to go vegan. So you're in a pretty good position here. I think the first question is going to be, what's stopping you from going vegan right now? What's holding you back from going vegan right now? You want to do it. You told me you want to do it. So what can we do about that? And then you find out what exactly is the thing that they think is holding them back. And then from whatever they answer from that point onwards, you can just work with that. If they say, well, I like eating meat, and you say, oh, well, what do you like more? Do you like the taste of the meat, or the fact that, not abusing animals? Like, which is more important to you? Which would you like more, to live without animal abuse or to live with meat? Well, they would most likely say, I'd actually want to live without animal abuse. Okay, and so what's actually holding you back from stopping abusing animals? It's just what's holding you back is a really good question for somebody in that position, because normally they don't really know. Normally they're just kind of like, actually, I never really thought about it, and it leaves them in a weird position where they actually have to consider, like, what the hell's going on, right? So I think questions are really important. Open questions. What's holding you back? A question from Rohit. My parents are ignorant and they sometimes add non-vegan foods and I have to eat it. Should I continue or do something else? Rohit, I don't know how old you are and I don't know your situation, how it is at home with your parents. I know a lot of young people living with their parents have a really tough life because they want to go vegan, but they have no say in what's going on. However, you do, I would honestly say to stand up for yourself as well. Now, I don't mean get into a fight. You don't need to get into a fight with them, but you can maybe encourage them to sit with you and watch something like a documentary that open, an introduction to this idea of eating plant-based would be a good start, like What the Health, Forks Over Knives, The Game Changers, and then maybe Cowspiracy, which is a very good documentary about the environment, but it does have some ethics involved in there as well. Very powerful documentary. If you can get them to sit and watch these things with you, it's a very good introduction to understanding why you want to be vegan. I wouldn't necessarily recommend trying to lecture them, as it's pretty much probably not going to work. All right, let's be honest. The statistics around that are pretty much clear. When you ask a room of vegans, how successful have you been in getting your parents to go vegan? The majority of people are going to say, I've not been successful. So lectures and that kind of thing doesn't really work. But sitting with documentaries and approaching them in that sense, it could work. And remember, the reason I'm not telling you to go and tell them to go fuck themselves, or get angry or something like that, like and be all really passionate about it and really push it, is it doesn't tend to work with family. I know in the last video I was joking, saying not even grandma, but at the same time it's like it's you've got two ways of going about it. A lot of people do go at their parents and their grandparents with some serious passion, and yeah, maybe it sometimes works, but what more often happens is you create a living environment that is not good, and your environment, people that you live with, that you care about, becomes really challenging, which makes your life, you need to live in a normal way, to be happy, to have the energy to reach out to other people and talk about veganism. It becomes very difficult when your home life is really, really horrible. So it's really, really tough. You got to find a balance between getting the point across but without actually destroying your home life, because if you do that, you're going to be useless when it comes to reaching out to other people about veganism, and you're going to have no energy, you're going to be sad, you're going to be depressed. And this is me speculating. I've met people who've told me that they don't want to on the street, don't want to talk to anybody about veganism because of how their parents reacted. So it's really sad, that this can happen. So just be careful about it. I recommend using movies as the ones I've mentioned to get the point across, and follow up with some discussions. I wouldn't recommend going in all guns blazing and, as I said, telling anyone to go fuck themselves or anything like that when it comes to parents especially. All right, we've got one more question then. I don't know who it's from because they didn't put their username, but what should I expect while starting street and online activism in India? What should I expect to face? And what all topics other than veganism should I be well versed with or research about? For example, caste, religion, excuses people come up with, or live by certain principles. So in India, my experience of Indian outreach would be that to expect that people do care about animals, at least they think they care about animals. They're not. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and, I don't know, I don't want to stereotype anybody here, but from my experience in India, most people I spoke to on the street in India did say they cared about animals and wanted to make sure animals didn't suffer, which I really appreciated. They said they even loved animals. So it's a good basis to start on. And I don't know if it's maybe because I was a foreigner that they were more interested in what I had to say. It's kind of like, oh, it's entertaining, it's a novelty, it's somebody who's not from here kind of thing. It's more interesting. But I found that people were very receptive, to be honest, when I was, out talking and doing outreach. But it's not always the case. And but anyway, it depends on what you're used to. I'd expect that people are going to come up with excuses. As always, milk will be a massive excuse that people come up with. I recommend following Arvind Animal Activist on YouTube. Arvind Animal Activist. He has a lot of videos dealing with very typical Indian responses to the subject of veganism, like the most common ones that come up in India, basically to argue against veganism. He's got a lot of videos about those, so I recommend doing that. And yeah, being well versed about the topics he covers are the ones that you should be well versed about. So I'd recommend going to his YouTube channel and watching his videos where he responds to some of the most typical excuses that he's seen and heard in India. So I'd recommend. That brings us to the end of the questions that I have here. So I will wrap it up now. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here, for watching. Thank you so much for the people that did these super chats as well. As I said, this video probably will get demonetized because of the topics we covered. So look, to help me continue to do these videos, this is how I make money. This is how I do this. So I really do appreciate you guys with the super chats. And also, if you do want to contribute to my videos and moving forward, as in support me and also get involved in the creation of videos, the scripting, the topics, all this stuff, you can join my Patreon team. You can join it just from $1 a month, which is not a lot of money, but actually on my side it is a lot of money because it really adds up. So you can do that. The link is in the top pinned comment below this video. Check it out, and if you sign up, you also get access to an exclusive Discord channel where I will be doing voice chats, as in like voice group chats with the Patreon team exclusively, and we'll be able to talk and discuss all these things in like a private space. So it's really cool. So you get access to all of that if you sign up to the Patreon team. So I hope you join the Patreon team. I hope you're here for all the future videos too. We've got some nice videos coming next week, so I hope you're sticking around. And yeah, thank you again for all the super chats today. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. I'll see you all in the next video.